I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ms. Thompson, will you take the roll, please?
Mr. Baum.
Here.
Mr. Martin. Dr. Fellow.
Here.
Ms. Brown. Here. Dr. Mann.
Here.
Mr. Thompson.
Here.
Ms. Waugh.
Here.
Mr. Soto.
Are there any members of the public who wish to address the board on any of the closed item sessions listed on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will recess to closed session to discuss under Government Code 54957.6 collective bargaining and Government Code 54957.6 negotiation with unrepresented employees, and we'll reconvene for an open session, hopefully in about an hour. Hopefully. I call the meeting back to order. And I'd like to ask Trustee Waugh to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I want to report to the public that there was no action taken during our closed session. Before the board is the approval of the minutes of the meeting of February 22nd. Are there any corrections, additions, or changes to the minutes that any of the board members would like to offer?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those indicate by using your voting device.
Oh, crap.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. Okay, announcement and recognitions. We'll start with the Board of Trustees, but I do want to, we're delighted to have this opportunity to recognize our longstanding partnership with the City of Pasadena Police Department, both in our instructional program and the tremendous partnership that the department has extended in helping us establish standards and protocols for our own campus police department and our search for a new chief. So I want to recognize our own police chief, Chief Philip Sanchez. Yep.
Well, good evening. It is absolutely a pleasure to address the trustees just briefly this evening, and thank you for the recognition on behalf of the men and women of the Pasadena Police Department. PCC has an extraordinary history. Interestingly enough, Dr. Rocha and I started our careers here in Pasadena about the same time, within about 30 days of one another. So Dr. Rocha and I not only have a professional but personal relationship as well, and that will continue to move forward. The police department in Pasadena has long supported PCC in academic efforts. We have many officers who are instructors here. Also in functional efforts with use of the EOC here at PCC and endeavors that we've used to train PCC officers up to contemporary standards in law enforcement. You have that firm commitment of the Pasadena Police Department moving forward. Your issues are our issues, your concerns are our concerns. I think the collaborative behavior, the philosophical ideologies by Dr. Mark Rocha really meld very well with my own. So it is an honor to serve in this community. It's an honor to support PCC. I congratulate you on a fine educational institution and look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Sanchez. We're so great. Go ahead, Dr. Rocha.
Well, thank you, President Bond. I want to thank you, Chief Sanchez, for coming today, because it gives us all an opportunity to say thank you for your many contributions and services to the college, especially recently. I do want to thank you for all the time that you gave serving on our search committee for a new chief, and that was wonderful service, and that process is moving along. And of course, our partnership in mutual security for the Tournament of Roses and emergency preparedness and so on. So we've been working together, and I really appreciate your partnership and your friendship.
Thank you as well, Dr. Rocha. PCC is a valued community partner. Thank you very much.
I just wanted to add on that, too, how much I personally appreciate as a resident of Pasadena, your leadership, and also the number of individuals within your department who are engaged in teaching our students, offering training to our cadets, and also being a model of an excellent public safety system. And please convey our appreciation to the men and women in uniform of the Pasadena Police Department, because I see them up, and I've done ride-alongs and seen how much work they do, not just law enforcement, but human services work that they do in this community, and I'm very grateful for that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief. We have a couple of quick updates from some board committees. I'll turn to Trustee Thompson on our Bylaw and Policy Review Committee.
Just to say that on the first meeting in April, we anticipate having before the board some amendments, not significant particularly, or not significantly substantive amendments to the two bylaws of the board, one that pertains to the self-evaluation of the board itself, and also to the evaluation of the superintendent president. So those will be brought to the board for consideration and possible action the first meeting in April.
Thank you, Trustee Thompson. And our Legislative Advocacy Committee.
Yes, the Legislative Advocacy Committee did not meet this Monday because I was in Sacramento advocating, and I went with on Tuesday with the group from the Chancellor's Office. We met with legislatures. Mr. Baum may want to speak more about that. And got some really very positive feedback from the legislators that I met with about the students who had come on Monday and had made appointments and had met with the legislatures and presented their story. But we did get some kind of non-positive feedback about the students who were demonstrating, which they said they found it kind of confusing, but they were very positive about the students who had come earlier, which I assume was what our students did, that they come in. They had appointments. We're also planning on participating in the League Advocacy Days in March and April, and we have some principles which I want to discuss in terms of the resolution, which is on the agenda. Is there any further comments from Trustee Waugh or Trustee Fellow? Okay.
Other trustees, announcements? Trustee Brown?
Yeah. Well, I had the opportunity of attending the staff recognition reception yesterday, as a matter of fact. We recognized quite a number of staff for their services here at PCC, and it was quite a good event. It was, to my understanding, that it was the first time that this was done at PCC, and I would like to commend Dr. Lastimado and the staff, administrative staff, for putting that through. Employee seems to be very thankful for that.
Thank you, Trustee Brown. Dr. Fellow?
Nothing, thank you.
Mr. Martin?
Nothing, thank you.
Trustee Waugh?
Yes, I wanted to thank Dr. Bell and Mrs. Chase for coming out to the San Marino PTA. They were able to give a talk on what we're doing in the district and the challenges we're facing and how we can best prepare the students to meet those challenges. So thank you very much. And then also to Mrs. Chase again, the outreach department, I know was over at the Camellia Festival this same weekend. So PCC was well represented. I also had a chance to attend Mount SAC's celebration of their Anapisi grant, which is the grant given to awarded to colleges that are serving high populations of Asian American Pacific Islanders. And so Mount SAC was one of 10 colleges in the state that got the Anapisi grant. So it was really great to see the students and hear the faculty talk about how much the grant has meant to them.
Thank you, Trustee Waugh. Trustee Soto?
No reports.
I'm going to report briefly. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say that Jeanette and Mann and Linda Waugh and I attended the meeting held by the Associated Students a week ago Monday, and led by one of your Vice President, Chris Fennessy, I think is the name, and he did an excellent job of running the meeting. It was, I thought, a very positive meeting. Students came, others came, expressed their concerns, raised questions in a very thoughtful way, and I thought it was very, very positive. I wanted to congratulate the Associated Students for having a meeting and the manner in which it was conducted. So thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Thompson, and to those trustees that attended, as well as Trustee Brown for attending the staff recognition celebration as well. I'm going to give a brief overview of the Board of Governors meeting, which just concluded yesterday afternoon in Sacramento. And a lot happened, but nothing more powerfully happened than it was a very emotional meeting because our Chancellor, Jack Scott, the President Emeritus of Pasadena City College, announced his retirement after so many years of leading the system and then being an exceptional representative to the legislature and our past president. And Chancellor Scott indicated he will remain as Chancellor through September 1st, the conclusion of the legislative session, and there's a lot that's coming up this legislative session, and then he's going to return to Pasadena, to Altadena, his home in Altadena, for retirement, and he and Lacreta are coming back, so I'm counting on us finding many ways to keep him engaged in the system, although he said he's planning to travel and take a break because ever since he graduated college in 1954, he has worked straight through. In fact, I didn't know this, and if anybody's seen him before, and I don't think he'd be embarrassed by saying that, he will be 79 years old this year, and he's been leading the system for almost 4 years. And then if anybody's earned a retirement, it's Jack Scott. So I look forward to having an opportunity to celebrate his contributions when he's back. A lot of great news for Pasadena City College and the Pasadena Area Community College District. And I want to praise the administration and the staff because for the first time I'm seeing a number of grants coming through for various projects that are being awarded to Pasadena Area Community College District, and I was proud to vote in the affirmative on the awarding of a couple of six-figure grants to PCC. There was an extended dialogue on the transfer model curriculum, the SB 1440, that guarantees access of community college students to transfer to the Cal State system. There is no district in the state that has more progress on adopting transfer model curriculum than Pasadena City College and Pasadena Area Community College District. We've got 6 programs approved and another 7 in the pipeline, and it was and no other district is as active as we are. There are a few that are close, but there are some that haven't passed any. And the Board of Governors is taking a close look at that and saying, what can we do to get some of the districts moving on that token? The Student Success Task Force is now proceeding to the legislature, and Dr. Mann and I were part of a number of students, and I expect Simon will hear about the students who went up to Sacramento to make sure their voices were heard this week. That there's a great deal of appreciation in the legislature for the measures that the community college system is taking to focus its efforts on student success and build in some institutional efficiencies that aren't necessarily cost heavy and looking to seek that partnership. Carol Liu has a bill that's going to advance some of the Student Success Task Force recommendations. Alan Lowenthal, the other state senator, is going to be advancing those recommendations. And there was a great deal of appreciation because at the same time we're saying we're changing, we also say we also need some help with resources. And we got a very positive reception from the legislature because we're taking some very difficult steps in pursuing that. There was a great deal of dialogue on the cost of textbooks and the cost of instructional materials, and especially electronic instructional materials, and how can we make sure that students aren't being ripped off, that they're going to have access to the materials that they've paid for after the semester's over, and creating some rule changes that will make sure that they're not being charged for materials they don't need as well. And so and we had a first reading on that. There's other modifications that they also recommend too. When faculty are assigning specific texts, sometimes faculty are assigning texts by that faculty member and requiring students to buy a textbook when the faculty member has an economic interest in assigning that text. And was there any modifications that could actually address that issue so that there isn't that students aren't being asked to buy something that they don't need just because it's a text by a faculty member who may benefit financially from that. So it was a very rich discussion at the Board of Governors meeting, and I'll look forward to updating the board and the public at the next meeting we have. Shared Governance Groups, Management Association. Oh, I'm sorry. I passed over the president of the college.
That might be okay. But thanks, President Bond. We have a couple of brief items. So the first one I wanted to start with, you'll see these boards that are up. These are the staff recognition boards from yesterday's staff recognition event. The first annual, I want to thank Dr. Lastamato and everybody in HR for creating the event. We recognized all employees and faculty, staff, administration. I want to thank Trustee Brown for coming and representing the trustees. And you'll see every employee from 5 years, 10 years, 15 years with their appropriate service pin and a certificate. I want to thank the representative of the employees who were there, Dave Douglas for the managers, and Ed Martinez for the faculty. I know, let's see, I think Alice was it, Gary Potts for Classified Senate was there. I know Officer Benson, I think, was there for the police, and members of the CSEA, the facilities were there. And as I said yesterday, we want to, we go all the way up to 45 years of service, that there are two colleagues who we celebrated 45 years of service yesterday, and we thank all of our employees, all of our staff for the work that they do in terms of our mission to help transform lives. So that was a great day yesterday. Now, as Juan is over there, Juan, can we fire up the internet? Is that does that work? Okay. Well, we'll move on while he's trying to do that. We just wanted to refer everyone to, if you have your iPad with you, to the college website. It has been revamped a little bit to make it easier to access certain bits of information. And I'll just go on while Juan is looking for that. I'll ask Vice President Van Pelt to talk briefly about the campus closure, April 16th to 22nd.
Thank you. In your packet is a report authored by me with regard to the campus closure. During spring break, which is normally a 4-day week because spring break Friday the campus is closed in any event, and it goes through the fact that the faculty are not on the campus and the classified workers and administrators and managers will not be. One of the big savings is going to be the unclassified employees. That is actually the biggest savings that we'll have. I go through where the savings are in terms of system shutdown, air conditioning systems, cooling towers, and so forth, for a savings that we're expecting to be on the order of $25,000. Then I go through the people that will actually have to be here during that time. We'll have a skeletal campus police crew. We're taking inventory in the bookstore during that week. And we also have some events on the campus that I list. And finally, what I conclude with is the fact that this closure is symbolic as much as anything else of the fact that it is not business as usual.
So, so there are rules. Will those be on the web?
I think it's already on the web.
Okay. Why don't we see if you can find those rules of the road for the campus closure? That would probably be under Rick's website. So now you can see we've done that, and if you
there it
go,
is.
If you click there, everyone can see the procedures for the campus closure. Okay, and one, I'd ask you to click back to the page 1 again of the website, and here I'd ask Dr. Bell, Vice President of Instruction, to briefly talk about the Spring Forward intercession.
Well, thank you, Dr. Rocha. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, we've put together a special intercession, which we're calling Spring Forward, specifically designed to target our students who were first and most importantly impacted by the recent class cancellation. It will be an opportunity to get those students who are closer to completion in the spring the chance to enroll in classes which will be specifically targeted to get them to completion in the spring. It is a link on the web page you will see there in front of you. It's a special 12-week session we're going to put in place. It will start the week of March 26th. The classes will all be Friday and weekend or online based so that they will not interfere with current classes that students have. And you can see there are 3 specific orders of priority we're going to look to get students into place. One of the interesting things and one of the noteworthy things is we are mounting, will probably be about 15 to 17 individual classes. And of those 15 to 17 classes, when we get those fully enrolled, and again, these will be classes which will move students towards completion, we in fact will be serving more students in those 15 classes than we would have served if we had kept the 46 classes in place that we had canceled. So this program is there. I've had the opportunity to notify 176 students individually with individual emails to let them know. We'll have the final class schedule for Spring Forward established in about the next 2 or 3 days, and then we will contact all those students who will benefit from this and look to get them enrolled into those classes so they won't have to do anything short of just showing up and being ready to go.
Can I just ask a brief question for clarification? How are you letting the campus community know about it? Because when I opened the Courier, I couldn't find any mention of the Spring Forward session.
Actually, I'm doing an interview. I think I may have already done an interview with the Courier, so it will be on there. I'm indicating to the campus community that, again, this website, this specific link on the website, will be updated on an ongoing basis. And so we're directing individuals to the website because that will be the most prevalent one. The Courier is scheduled an interview. I also have an interview scheduled on Lancer Radio tomorrow, specifically to get more information on this.
And how are you contacting the eligible students?
We're going to contact them individually. We've been able to identify who those students are, and once we get the classes in place, we will contact all those students individually and ask them if they wish to participate, so they will get first right of refusal, if you will. And if they do, we will then put them into the class, batch load them so they won't have to go to the web and do anything, and then inform them of the class into which they've been enrolled and obviously the date that it will begin, and they'll simply have to come to class and be ready to go.
Great, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Bell. And Juan, if you go back to page 1 again, and we'll finish this with Executive Director of the Foundation, Bobby Abram. And Bobby?
Yes. As you can see from the home page, if you push on the donate to the graduation fund, it takes you to the graduation fund page. There's a little introductory paragraph, then you can click on that and go to the next page, and it gives a full description of the graduation fund that Dr. Rocha announced at the last Board of Trustees meeting, in which, by the way, has the support of 2 of the Board of Trustees members already, as well as all the members of the Executive Committee. So we've got a great start to the fund. Denise Albrecht, who is with us in the audience tonight because of an injury, she's not sitting at her post, but the Classified Senate wanted me to announce on their behalf tonight that they made a decision today in their Senate meeting to donate $500 to the graduation fund.
All right, congrats. Thank you. Good. And I do want to really thank Juan and his whole staff for revamping the web page. Basically, by referring everyone to the web page, they can get all the information they need on anything they need. And with that grad fund, on that blood drive kind of element that you saw on Bobby's website, the initial goal is to raise over the next year $1 million, which we think is a realistic goal, and that would be, give or take, about 200, the equivalent of 200 sections for additional sections for students through the grad fund. And so the money is coming in. And please answer the door when Bobby knocks on it. And with that, President Baum, we're completed.
Thank you, Dr. Rocha. Shared Governance Groups, Management Association.
Thank you, Trustee Baum. A couple of things. One is I want to announce that we're very proud that one of our managers received the Association of College and Research Libraries Leadership Award this year, the 2012 Community College Leadership Award, and that's Marianne Lawn, and we're extremely proud of it. The second item is that today the Management Association reached an agreement with the district through an MOU, which basically says that any manager who does not retire or resign before June 30th, or retires or resigns by June 30th, will have a position equal to or greater than a title level and salary next year. So we're very pleased that we were able to reach this agreement with the district. And the third item is a natural sciences item. I want to invite you all to Girls Science Day on Saturday morning. They're going to start arriving in buses about 8 o'clock. You're all welcome to come. I believe Carol Lou will be there to speak to the girls. And it'll be a half a day of science and middle school girls, so it'll be interesting.
Terrific. Thank you so much. President Martinez.
Good evening, board members. I'm not going to give a report as much as make a brief statement. I'm sure that you have heard about the last Senate meeting of February the 27th. You may have even seen the videotape on YouTube, so I won't reiterate the events of that day. You also have in your package a letter from the President and a response. The response was written by me and the Senate officers. We simply want to assert the rights and the responsibilities of the Academic Senate. I think that we are fairly clear about that in our letter. And all I will say at this point is that I sincerely hope that we can move forward with the real issues pertaining to education that are at stake before all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Was there any other comments on behalf of the classified Senate? To be sure. Okay, thank you. Associated Students, Mr. Frazier.
Thank you, President Baum. So March in March was a resounding success. We took 94 students with the Associated Students sponsored trip, and 59 students went with the Faculty Association, including some of our AB 540 students. I'm very proud to say that the March in March students with PCC stayed on message and on point. And very clearly during the march that the point was education and getting funding for education. So special thanks to Dave Krause from the CSEA 777. He took the call from the administration to support this trip very seriously when it was brought up at College Council and came with us as a trip advisor on that behest. The lobby committee met with Assembly Member Mike N., Kevin De Leon, and Anthony Portantino and had a, again, very positive reaction from them. We're really hoping to channel the March in March success to a continued momentum now, continue to push and advocate for better state support for the community college system and education in general. Incidentally, we took the largest contingent of students from the community college, any one community college system, so I'm very proud about that. Great. Lobby committee is going to be discussing Lobby Committee will be discussing the most recent charge to the College Council on advocacy for the tax package. We'll be considering its involvement from our level. Lobby Committee is also continuing its push for the Tax Oil to Fund Education Initiative, Prop 1522, and we hope that we will gain further campus support for that as we continue to gather signatures. On a personal note, as someone who spent $500 on textbooks, I'm glad the Board of Governors is looking into that as well. The town hall, as Trustee Thompson mentioned, was attended by a large number of students, had a lot of feedback and personal stories, and a few suggestions on where AS should go next. We're going to be analyzing this in the next month, right before our next town hall, which will be at the end of March. And thank you to the administration and the trustees who attended. The Associated Students and PCC Feminist Club is going to be working with Trustee Wah for International Women's Day. We're going to be screening the film Misrepresentation, exploring underrepresentation of women in influential positions by mainstream media. That will be March 20th. Lancer Movie Night, I've been asked to report, is very popular. We showed the Muppets movie in the quad last month, and this month we're showing something called Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close. I've not heard of it personally, but there we are. ASPCC continues to be active in shared governance. We will be appointing additional members to the Enrollment Management Committee for continued input and consultation with students on enrollment management issues moving forward. And finally, onto the graduation fund, ASPCC is happy to announce that we are going to be making an immediate $1,000 donation to the graduation fund, and we have earmarked a further $4,300 for further donation pending just some details of process once the graduation fund is sorted with Dr. Bell. So we're very happy to have earmarked that further money for later disbursement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Frazier, and congratulations to your AS president, who was profiled in the Pasadena Sun this past weekend.
Yes, she was. Unfortunately, she can't attend these meetings right now because she has a class at this time, so I will pass that on.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to item D, the annual report on KPCC, and we have with us the Executive Director of Southern California Public Radio, Mr. Bill Davis, and I'll turn it to Dr. Rocha. But I should preface this by, we have a board committee that annually reviews the agreement with Southern California Public Radio and the district with respect to the operation of KPCC. that committee did meet in December. We had a very productive conversation with Mr. Davis and Dr. Rocha, and are looking forward to sharing the progress at this meeting. And going forward, the committee will be chaired by Dr. Fellow.
Thank you, Trustee Baum. I have the pleasure of introducing formally Mr. Bill Davis. And actually, as a correction from the agenda, Bill Davis is actually the president of Southern California Public Radio that operates our licensed station, KPCC 89.3. So, and the second thing I'd like to say is that you have a report that Bill has prepared that he will review with us. It is dated December 28th, so Bill conscientiously prepared it quite some time ago, and so we were just able to get him on today. So with that, Bill, I say thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Roach. And of course, nothing's happened since December 28th. So, I'll start my remarks specifically addressing the items in the report that I think should be called out. And then I'd like to take a couple of minutes to bring you up to date on some things that have happened since the 28th. And then would be happy to take any or answer any questions that you all might have. The first thing I want to point out is actually at the end of the report, we note that we had 14 Pasadena City College students who were interns in calendar year 2011. I should note that 2 of those now are working full-time for other media organizations. Yasmin Nua just got married and moved down to Orange County, where she is working as, I believe, a reporter for the OC Weekly. And then Kathleen Miles is working for the Huffington Post. But we've also had, as I've noted in the past, several interns who have moved from internship positions at KPCC into full-time paid positions there. In terms of the financials, I think they're relatively self-explanatory. I always want to make sure that there's an understanding in the amounts that SCPR invests in KPCC over and above the funds that we raise during the on-air fundraisers on KPCC. And so that's in a separate report. And this is actually for fiscal year 2011. And that's the latest year that we have for audited purposes. But during that year, during the on-air drives with zip codes that are served by KPCC, we received nearly $3.6 million in individual contributions, and in the same fiscal year, our total expenses for KPCC were roughly $9 million. So the net investment in the station was just slightly less than $5.5 million. Obviously, the rest of that money comes from individual contributions outside of the fundraisers, grants, corporate underwriting, et cetera. But this is an item that is specifically called out in our contract, and so I wanted to, in our PSOA, and I'll emphasize the reason for referencing that in just a little bit. But I wanted to be sure that I mentioned that. And then the audience data that we provided really is looking at the trailing 6 months from December through, from June through December of 2011. And since then, we've actually seen a considerable uptick. 2 of the past 3 months, KPCC has had a combined audience in Orange County, Los Angeles County, and the Inland Empire, north of 700,000 weekly listeners. So we feel very good about that. For more than a year now, we have been the most listened to public radio station, irrespective of format, in Southern California. And I believe we were the third or fourth most listened to public radio station nationally in terms of trailing 6-month audiences in the fourth quarter of calendar 2011. So those are some of the items that I wanted to specifically call out in the report. I can stop and take questions about the report now, or I can continue on and fill you in on some of the things that have been happening since I wrote this.
Why don't you go through your whole presentation and some of the new items, and then we'll ask questions at the end.
Very good. I think the most important new item is that we created a position that is, we call the Vice President of Content for SCPR. And we were fortunate to hire Russ Stanton, who is the former editor of the Los Angeles Times. Russ, I think the Times won at least 3 and as many as 5 Pulitzer Prizes during his tenure, his 3-year tenure as editor of the LA Times. Digitally, he's one of the most foremost digital innovators, and his hiring reflects 2 issues, or 2 priorities, I should say, for SCPR. The first is our commitment to outstanding journalism. Currently, I believe KPCC has the second, at most it's the third, or I should say at least it's the 3rd largest newsroom, professional newsroom in Southern California. And I believe we have 13 open positions, and when those are filled, we will be the 2nd largest newsroom in Southern California. So hiring Russ, I think, sends a very clear message about the importance that we place on the quality of journalism that we are providing on through SCPR, on KPCC, on our other stations, and also importantly on devices like this. We're seeing the transition from just pure FM radio to people who are streaming, people who are downloading disaggregated content, and that is becoming, the digital usage of all media are becoming more and more important, and it's absolutely critical that if we're going to fulfill KPCC's and Southern California Public Radio's mandate that we have to have expertise and innovation in this area. The second thing I wanted to mention is that we have been meeting with the city of Pasadena around emergency communications in the event of a natural disaster. And we have been talking with them both in terms of how we would coordinate our reports with first responders, not only in the city of Pasadena, but with the larger area, and also ensuring that our diesel supplies and other power would be maintained in the event of an emergency where other power might be lost. KPCC, as I said, is a critical lifeline, because in the event of power outages, these things don't necessarily work, right? Cell phone traffic gets overwhelmed, cell phone towers get taken out, and so live over-the-air transmission becomes critical on battery-powered radios, et cetera, in cars and at homes. So we are developing a disaster preparedness plan with our Board of Trustees. I will meet with the radio subcommittee here of this board, and we will apprise you of that progress and work with you as well. My guess is that there may be some very important relationships that we want to have with first providers and first responders here on the campus as well. And then finally, what I wanted you all to be aware of is Dr. Rocha and I traveled a couple of weeks ago to Washington, D.C., where we had a private and off-the-record meeting with the director of the Media Bureau at the Federal Communications Commission and several of his staff and staff attorneys. There were also present several attorneys who represent non-commercial broadcasters and religious broadcasters. And the reason for this was the FCC has raised some questions about how public service operating agreements, such as the one that we have, Southern California Public Radio has with Pasadena City College, how those are being used and whether they might be being abused by non-commercial broadcasters, by licensees, and by religious broadcasters. And a number of attorneys, communications attorneys in Washington got together, and they asked Tom and Terry Clifford from the Station Resource Group, to identify, what was really the gold standard relationship for a public service operating agreement and a public service provider. And they selected us. And so we went back there, we had the meeting. As I said, it was an off-the-record, it was a private meeting. But I think that we were able to, when I say we, I should actually say Dr. Rocha, was really able to communicate very clearly and effectively that the Pasadena Area Community College District is the licensee, it maintains control, that there is a close relationship that they are communicated with, that the values and the objectives of the college are being furthered by this relationship. And all of those, as I said, there were a number of questions that were asked by members of the Media Bureau. And, I thought that Dr. Rocha was just, an absolutely outstanding witness, if you will, for the kind of positive use that these public service operating agreements can provide. We don't know what regulatory or other changes might be recommended or might be promulgated by the FCC, but I can tell you that every single public broadcaster who has a public service operating agreement, and there are literally hundreds within the public radio system, owes Dr. Rocha and the Pasadena Area Community College District a debt of gratitude. So my thanks to you all for that.
Thank you, President Davis. I appreciate that. Open it up to questions from the board. Dr. Fellows?
I just want to make a comment. Russ Stanton, you can't get better than that, so I congratulate you, and he's going to do some terrific things. He's very close to our university and has helped us a great deal, and what a find.
Russ was fantastic. I'm not bragging by any stretch of the imagination. We had 4 people who were absolute stellar finalists. All of those people who were finalists had won Pulitzer Prizes. There were people who didn't make the final interview round who had Pulitzer Prizes and who had been editors of either major metropolitan dailies or sections, major masthead sections of metropolitan dailies. Some of that may reflect the angst that the print newspaper industry is going through. But I think that if you talked to not only Russ, but to the other people who we talked to, who we interviewed, what they saw was a strategic plan that I shared with you all last year that really states out a very clear and affirmative vision for public service journalism. And rather than cutting and cutting and cutting to some uncertain future, we're trying to build to a very specific level of service, and I think people really responded positively to that.
That's wonderful.
Dr. Mann?
Yes, I'm very pleased to see we have 14 interns and that you have added workspace for even more interns. You know, I've been very concerned about this from the time we signed the contract, and I hope in the future maybe you can even hire a few more of them.
Look, interns are really, if you think about the value per dollar spent, interns are a great way for us to both train future journalists and also get significant benefit ourselves from that service.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes, when we had the meeting with Bill Davis back in December, as Mr. Baum mentioned, one of the things we talked about was ways in which PCC and Southern California Public Radio can work together more effectively to present information about the college, the needs of public education, the needs of the college, the things we're doing, et cetera. And one conversation that we've had subsequently, not with Mr. Davis, but with Larry Mantle of his staff, is the possibility and looking for ways to bring information to the public about the Pasadena Bioscience Collaborative and the very key central role that Wendy Johnston and our own faculty and students have played in that, and the internship opportunities that they have, et cetera. So it's a delightful relationship, and we're really pleased to be able to keep working with you on that and explore ways that we can present more effectively to the public what we're doing and what our challenges are, what our needs are, et cetera. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Thompson. One thing I would, actually two things I would add to that. One is I believe Jack Scott has been on, or Chancellor Scott has been on at least once and maybe twice in forums around either higher education generally or cuts to state-supported higher education specifically. We have talked about doing some other reporting and convening around that, and so my guess is that there will be subsequent opportunities for us to address some of the budget issues that I know have been weighing heavily on this particular board. The other thing that that I was remiss in not pointing out, but speaks to that, is in the fall we convened several forums specifically around veterans issues, and I was delighted in having those forums, and in the process of having those forums, to learn that Pasadena City College is actually not only a state but a national model for reintegrating service members and veterans into or back into civilian life, either at the end of their service period or after they've come out of the service. And met with several of the volunteers who work with vets here at Pasadena City College. And my guess is, not my guess, I'm positive that you're going to be hearing more reporting on those efforts and those initiatives in the coming months on KPCC.
That's great. One final question, if I may, and this is my favorite question, but is Prairie Home Companion coming to Los Angeles this year?
It is.
Where and when?
I don't have the date. It is in June. It's going to be at the I think it's going to be at the Hollywood Bowl this year. So yes, it will be here.
All right, thank you.
Dr. Rocha, do you have any comments?
Thanks, Trustee Baum. Just by way of expressing our gratitude to you, Bill, for our leadership, I did want to mention for all that under Bill's leadership of SCPR and KPCC, they're doing nothing less than reinventing what public radio is all about. In many ways, we're running parallel tracks because, as well you know, and Bill is too modest to bring this up, as well you know, National Public Radio, which has a public mission much like ours, access to quality content much like ours, has had its public funding seriously cut over the years. And so Bill and his team have responded to that in extraordinarily innovative ways that you hear on the radio. And I do invite all of our colleagues to go over to and visit the Moan Broadcasting Center, because it really is you enter an environment in which you really see what the future is. And I won't let you get away without answering one question. You have such a good way of just explaining in a kind of a sound bite, what is an operating agreement? Because that is at the heart of our, link.
Sure. So a public service operating agreement fundamentally is a contract, but it's something more than a contract. It is a recognition by the licensee that the operator, that would be us, works with them to provide increased levels of public service to the communities that the licensee serves. And it has many aspects of a contract, a specific term, their financial obligations, their other operational obligations. But the the operating agreement is important, but the public service aspect of that is critical. And I think that if we had not had a track record of 11 years of audience growth and 11 years of increasing levels of public support for that, that public service, the FCC probably would not have responded in the way that they did. So as I said, there are, in many ways, it functions like a contract, but I think that it actually does have a higher purpose, and I think the FCC intends to hold those higher purposes and make sure that the two parties, or the multiple parties in some cases, live up to those public service obligations. Is that a fair?
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. You've done such an exceptional job over the years to build this into one of the most successful public radio entities in the country, and you've only elevated the value of Pasadena City College in the process by building even broader recognition among your listeners and your opinion leaders, the opinion leaders throughout the community. The one thing I'm going to ask the committee to do is take you up on the offer you extended to us during our meeting to work with you and your staff and Bobby Abram to find the best way to leverage the underwriting credit that we have as part of our contract at the top of the hour and the public service announcements in order to best communicate various aspects of PCC to the listening audience of Southern California Public Radio. So looking forward to asking Tony to come back and work with your team to work on that as well.
We'd be happy to do that. And again, I think I have the best gig in public media. I really do. But one of the best aspects of that is the opportunity to work with you all and work with the students. You really can't even keep track of the kids coming in through the internships. I've got a lot to do, and so I don't get to know all of them personally. But it really brings a sense of the audience, not that we're serving currently, but that we will serve. And actually, I mentioned this at the FCC. One of the things that I am always amazed at is walking by the valedictorians and the kids, or not the kids, but many times the adults, who are the best students and who've been honored at graduation. And you look at that and you see where America's going to be in the next 20 years. And, to be part of that and to have that relationship with this institution is just very, very meaningful to us in a way that could never be captured in any sort of contractual language in a public service agreement.
Thank you so much. One last question.
Yeah.
How many members do you need to shorten that pledge drive from 10 days to 5 days coming up? You're taking
actually,
new members.
I honestly don't know the number where we're at, but I know that they've made the decision. We're going to go with a shorter drive. Okay. And, so we're swallowing hard. I hope that it works. But we have very, and I'd be happy to share this at another time, we have very aggressive membership growth goals, because that's going to be critical to us maintaining the increased level of journalistic service that we want to provide. So again, I don't have the number specifically, but I do know that we have made the decision to do a shorter drive and lop 5 days off the drive.
Okay, well, there's a bit of news you just shared with our listening audience. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're moving on to public comment on non-agenda items. I have 1, 2, 3. I have several comments on non-agenda items, and we have a lot of folks to get through. And so so I want to read the statement that members of the public may request the opportunity to address the board regarding any item on the agenda. To do so, please complete a request to address the board form and give it to the board secretary prior to the deliberation of the agenda item. Individual speakers are limited to 5 minutes. Total audience participation on any agenda item is limited to 30 minutes. I'd like to, with the permission of the board, extend it to 40 minutes at this outset to see if we can squeeze as many folks in as possible, and then we'll see where we are at 8:35. I did have a card from Jill O'Hara, but I don't know. I think she is here. So I'd like to. Right. Oh, is Matt Hennis here too? Okay. If you don't mind going right after Jill, is that okay? It's because Jill's also communicated a time constraint as well.
Dear members of the Board of Trustees, President Rocha, and members of the Pasadena City College community, I have come tonight to beg the Board of Trustees to act quickly to stop the flood of bad decision-making by the current administration that is destroying the integrity of Pasadena City College. I wonder to myself how much cumulative damage has to occur before the board decides to take decisive action to curb the excesses and the destructive acts of the current administration. I also wonder if buying out ex-President Perfumo's remaining contract will in retrospect look like small change compared to the amount necessary to recoup the costs of the damage done by the erratic decisions, the unilateral decision-making, and the astounding mismanagement of the current administration. We can talk about larger costs incurred by the present administration, such as the approximately $16 million spent to empty out the U building, only to discover that there is no money available for a new building, and now the U building sits nearly empty. However, if this building is unsafe as was proclaimed, why are people still using it? Or we can talk about the costs of this administration's adding a lawyer and 3 VP positions, only to demand the firing or removal of academic deans because the deans are too expensive. It is far more expensive to recover from the destruction of dismantling the academic services structure on this campus and of leaving staff, deans, faculty, and students in the classroom vulnerable to the erratic, shoot-from-the-hip decisions of the current administration. Where will faculty innovation be when there are no deans to support faculty and to communicate cutting-edge curriculum to the administration and to other areas on campus? What will student transfer rates be like when the administration finishes its irresponsible approach to class scheduling and reduces student access so dangerously that students must go elsewhere for their classes or else risk spending another semester or two to finish at Pasadena City College? Isn't student success our primary mission at PCC? As for the latest of the administration's proposed changes, what will the cost of eliminating winter session be? Who does this decision serve? Have studies been done showing it to be better than the current schedule? Have collegial discussion and assessment taken place to determine the innumerable effects such a change will have on all segments of the college? Canceling winter intersession doesn't help students who must now fight to finish their transfer requirements with fewer course offerings. It does not demonstrate effective building use, and it is bound to upset the annual sequential course planning. Who does it help? Lastly, I wonder if it is possible to irrevocably damage the structural integrity of an institution. through mismanagement, bad decision-making, and total disregard for others? The answer, I'm afraid, seems obvious. It is possible to bring about such damage. It is possible to destroy the stellar reputation of an institution and to replace employee pride and motivation with the cynicism and bitterness that dominate campus conversations at the present time. Note the absence of so many faculty at the recent recognition event. I would like to demonstrate the very real possibility of such a destructive occurrence by using an earthquake analogy, something fitting to a California institution. The situation at PCC has all the elements of a strike-slip fault, much like the San Andreas fault coursing its way through California. The deans, staff, faculty, and students are standing on one plate, moving in one direction, while the administration is standing on the other plate, moving in an opposite direction. Anyone who lived here during the Northridge earthquake in '94 knows what happens in such a circumstance. It brings a huge wave of destruction in its wake. I hope the board members realize that we're heading towards such an earthquake here at PCC and that you, the board members, are the only ones who can successfully avert such a catastrophe. We beg the board members to curb the excesses and the abuse of the current administration in order to preserve the life of the institution that we all love and have done so much to nurture and to protect. Thank you very much for your patience and for your attention.
Matt Hennis.
I'd like to thank the board for giving me an opportunity to speak here. I'm Matt Hennis. I'm a full-time teacher in the math department. And I'm here to share with you some of what I see happening on the campus today and how some of your actions have affected at least one employee. I can't argue with the legality of posting our salaries online, especially when it was in response to a statewide request, but I can tell you that it would have been better for me had we been notified ahead of time that it was going to happen. Just a little picture to paint, I was in my office answering questions with a couple of students where I find myself, when I found myself answering questions for the Courier about an article that appeared recently. And the fact is that these questions never would have been asked had the staff been notified that our salaries were going to be posted online. This is just one way that this has become a distraction for me. And because of what last month's board meeting became, I was denied access to my office by the police who locked down this building because it happens to be in this building across the hall from where we have our board meetings here. That's rather more than a distraction for me. This bothers me. What bothers me more is how the information was presented, because when I see that column entitled the total cost of the employee, I want to add another one entitled the total worth of the employee, because that doesn't seem to be much in consideration these days. With the way our salary information is presented on the Pasadena Star News site, all we see at first is a base salary and how much more an employee raked in extra pay by teaching overload classes and the like. A statement was made to the effect that all you see is numbers, and I don't think it takes a math teacher to say that numbers don't tell the whole story here. In my case, the extra pay came mostly from teaching overload and winter and summer classes, and I think I'm good. Anecdotally and statistically, I can see the good that I'm doing in helping students get through math here at PCC. And when a board member makes a statement about how much an adjunct faculty member might think I care about my students because I want to teach more of them, my response to you is that I am not here to serve adjunct faculty members. It's true that my 6 overload classes last year meant that fewer adjunct instructors taught math here last year. But I did not take those classes from an adjunct instructor, for that would imply the adjunct instructor had them first. That's missing the point even, because I think we should be focusing on the quality of the education being delivered and not the quantity of people delivering the education. And this quality can be delivered irrespective of full or part-time status. And besides, without our adjuncts, we would be in real trouble. My point is that blanket decisions can have adverse effects and that blanket statements can be misleading. The rest of my extra pay came from the extra work I did in running Chem Jam and the 402 level of Math Jam, which are 2 pathways programs of the type that Dr. Rocha has been promoting. We now have a campus environment wherein I'm feeling criticized by my board for teaching too much math and actively participating in programs that my president thinks will improve the current situation, while bullhorns ring out with demands for him to step down for a decision that is ultimately the result of our feeling the effects of the financial problems of the state of California. We need to do a better job of communicating with our employees and our students about what's happening on this campus, and I will be the first to admit that that communication is a two-way street. If I'm thinking this much about all this, I imagine that our students find their attention divided too, and the division of both the school and the attention of our students and staff is becoming counterproductive. I ask you to contemplate all of this before implementing decisions that impact hundreds or thousands of people, or going on record with a statement that implies that full-time teachers who work overtime do so without regard to their students' needs. Some may work that way, but I don't know any. Some of us are doing literally everything we can to get more people through here, and if we as a college can get out of our own way, then perhaps we can continue the progress toward which we've been working so hard. Because even through all of this, I'm proud to say that I work at the best campus that I've ever set foot on, and I know that we will get through this. Thank you, and now if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to my class.
Thank you so much. So those two speakers had asked to speak first because they had time constraints. So now I'm going to go through the rest of the list. I'm going to go with the student speakers first, and then we'll get to there's a number of faculty who would also like to address the board. So the first student speaker is Jose Alvarenga. And followed by Jose will be Rebecca Montes.
Hello. My name is Jose Alvarenga. Again, I was here the week before. I'm the undocumented student who talk about how the DREAM Act passed and how this board should take the necessary steps to provide that help for undocumented students so they can apply for financial aid next year. Today I was thinking of coming here to tell you of how great the PCC students represented their school at March in Sacramento this past Monday, and to see how after continuous strong student actions in school that demonstrated the seriousness and the concern and commitment to defending public education of the students, you are now making the steps towards making with these students to move this school forward. Instead, you have not only ignored and disappointed students and faculty once again, but have moved to make further cuts, including possibly eliminating winter 2012. Now, we all know that the racist, elitist agenda of slashing public education in California and elsewhere have been severe and have tremendously affected colleges all over the state and the country, including PCC. But even during a period of economic crisis like this one, PCC stands in a different ground. PCC still has the necessary resources to keep this school as one of the top public community colleges of the country, that if managed well and inclusively, it wouldn't be necessary to cut 45 faculty and slash classes and possibly cut our winter semester. You all get to manage this school. You are the appointed leaders. You should stand with the students and faculty. You have the option to reject the racist and elitist agenda of millionaires and or politicians of mutilating and devastating public education and the future of millions of young, ambitious, and talented people. You have the capacity to advocate for student rights and to prevent a future more and more segregated and elitist higher education system. Instead of continuing crushing the dreams of young people, of intimidating anyone who refuses to follow the agenda that you are following, including faculty and student leaders. And by the way, those faculty that if any faculty gets unjustly fired, the student body at PCC completely support those faculty, and the necessary actions to reinstate those faculties will be taken. Instead of creating more and more conflict among students, faculty, and administration, of turning a safe haven for young minds into a campus full of hostility and exasperation, you should be the most strongest public advocates in defense of public education. And I don't mean organizing events like the March in Sacramento that serve as a safety valve for politicians and millionaires and administration to let students have blow-off steam for one day and then go back to their schools. You have the option to stand with millions of courageous public defenders of public education, or you need to take a step aside. Because the student movement is growing stronger and stronger in California and elsewhere, and it's becoming more and more conscious of its power and its capacity. We know that if we continue fighting, with or without your help, we can turn things in the direction that this country needs to take. PCC students have pointed the way to achieving that. If things continue as they are, students' actions will continue and grow, and PCC students will continue to serve as leaders and as an example for the rest of the state and the country. And even though this room is not packed tonight, have no doubt that students are and will continue fighting. And lastly, online classes, which are not quality education. Your goal to have this board to supposedly honor faculty, ironically that after you have fired 45 faculty that dedicated their life to serving this school, and these plans which to decorate the room will not stop students from fighting. Thank you.
Rebecca Montes, and then followed by Jane Hallinger.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Becky Montes. I'm a student, and I'm speaking today as a member of METRA on campus. So I want to speak about, in reference to a letter that METRA received yesterday regarding our use of the Chicano room in the library on Tuesdays from 12 to 1 and Wednesdays from 12 to 1. So we have for a long time been accustomed to using that room during that time for our meeting. So naturally yesterday for our first meeting this semester, we all headed to this room to only find out that we couldn't meet there. At our arrival, we found out that this letter we received stated that we could not reserve this room because it was for students and study groups only, ultimately meaning we could no longer count on it as our meeting place for METRA. This letter was literally about a sentence long and clearly was written up with no intention of resolving this issue with us Mechistas, as if it wasn't a significant issue to us and as if we weren't going to do anything about it. Students and their organizations deserve a lot more respect than that. We are METRA, a group with a strong foundation of students, and we fight for education. So we are a study group, maybe not in the strict sense of the word, but we most definitely are a group of students using our minds to discuss issues and solve problems concerning our education. METRA of PCC is dedicating to working with its community, and a lot of those awesome positive ideas, plans, and events for the students and the community are developed in that room. What was even more maddening, aside from the curt and inconsiderate letter, was that as a tactic, I guess, to warn us that they meant business and to enforce this statement sent to us was the removal of our plaque from the Chicano room. And this plaque says that METRA can use this room Tuesdays and Wednesdays from the time 12 to 1. There was absolutely no, this kind of action carries with it a negative connotation, as if to say we have been misusing our time spent in that room. There was absolutely no consideration for what that plaque represents, that behind it there lies hard work, social relationships, what past Mechistas on this campus have fought for. And simply meaning to all of us Mechistas who have worked in there and respected METRA and the room with what we do. I believe these actions combined are an incredibly inconsiderate way of displacing us for what I do not deem as a valid reason. METRA, the PCC, is nothing but work by the students, for the students in our communities. We should be treated as equals. Our opinion and words should count too, and you should be interested in hearing them and working with us, and not just simply sending a letter and dismissing us. We demand that everyone who plays a part in helping run, making decisions, and implementing them in this institution support the students and have our backs, and that behind every action that is taken, respectful forethought is taken as well. Thank you.
Jane Hallinger, followed by Crystal Watson. I wanted to make sure Jane's first this time instead of last.
I'm not
Faculty.
suspicious. What I have to say, you've probably all heard before, but I feel our voices are important and we should be listened to. Shared governance and respect both have been essential to the quality of our institution. Respect includes everyone, from groundskeeper to custodians to students to classified workers to the faculty, etc. And we feel that we have not been given this respect in this last year. Was there shared decision or even dialogue and planning when 5 vice presidents were added to the payroll and then 45 instructors fired to save money? Where is the logic? These people are core of the institution. They are mentors still, even as retired faculty, to those who come behind us. Was there respect given to the students who wanted to voice their frustrations, being kept for 2 hours before allowed to speak last meeting? Was there respect shown faculty, students, and even the president of the retired faculty when they were not allowed in the building to attend the meeting? We know that many of us, including several of us in the room today, have been served on the Faculty Senate, the Academic Senate, and been presidents. Never in the history of our time at Pasadena have we ever seen such a lack of respect for a hallmark of our institution, which is the Academic Senate. Where was the respect when administrators took over the room and denied faculty permission to enter their own meetings? That does not make sense. Okay. In December, I read from a PCC material on shared governance, and I also read the League's comments on a president understanding the culture of an institution before making changes. We have a strong culture and a strong history. We revere our history. We respect our history, and we respect our employees. Decisions have been made at this college without any advisory participation or without any participation at all from us. Decisions are made, and then committees are put in place after the decisions were made. And that does not seem to be the way to do shared governance. Shared governance comes at the front of the problem, not at the rear. The strong culture of Pasadena City College has been discarded by this administration. We are no longer a part of the discussion. Recognition pins seem to be an insult when many of the faculty voices have not been heard. An example is the proposed change to eliminate winter intersession and create trimesters. We spent 2 years of discussion in the union, in the Faculty Senate, before we even put in the 6 weeks intercession. We had votes with the classified faculty, we had votes, classified members of a college, we had votes from the faculty, we had votes and participations from the students. It took 2 years of decision making. Now, I'm not saying we need to spend 2 years again, but we need to be included in the discussion before the decision is made. Okay. So what we would like is something very simple. And I'm retired, but I still care. What we would like is for the administration to give us the respect and put us back in the process of decision making. Thank you.
Crystal Watson, followed by Dan Haley.
Well, hello. It's really nice to see a lot of you I haven't seen in a while. And frankly, I think you have got something almost unanimous here. You have a group of people who would like to participate in this process and offer their services to solve and help solve the problems of a state that is running out of money. It seems to me this board should take advantage of the willingness to help solve problems. Now, as you know, some of you know I'm a debate coach, and so one of the things I like to teach my students when we deal with policy is to talk about why you need to change. When you have good reasons to change, you can almost always get everyone to buy into the process. And I urge you all in this next year to consider that process, because I think you can get everybody supporting you to help this school. Now, I do have one other thing I'd like to say to you. you were discussing the costs, the high costs of textbooks. Now, if for no other reason than the fact that I found a textbook for $37, I know it recommends me well. So I just want you to know that. $37 instead of $147. I can't tell you how proud I was to find that book out. It's a good one. But I urge you to consider the process that you've got an awfully lot of bright, able people here who can help you run this college. And they're willing to do it. Every one of them has said exactly the same thing. They want to participate. They want to put their dog in the fight. And so I urge you to take the spirit of which all of these ideas are offered. Everybody in this room loves this school. And so I would like to leave you with that thought. Thank you.
Dan Haley, followed by Roger Marhine.
Good evening. My name is Dan Haley. I'm one of the librarians here. And I'd like to speak to you tonight about the last meeting of the Academic Senate on February 27th, when the President used campus police to restrict access to the meeting and preempted the normal functions and procedures of the meeting for his own purposes. These actions were not only a violation of the Brown Act, but they are a direct assault on the integrity and the independence of the Academic Senate. I'd like to tell you that this is an isolated incident, but I can't. This is just the most recent incident of a long series of actions that have undermined the institutions of this college. I'm going to tick off a few. The administration has attempted to circumvent hiring procedures and policies. The existing management structure has been weakened and marginalized by the realignment process, which is ongoing, despite the promise of a review and evaluation process. The administration has attempted to cut off communication between employees and the Board of Trustees. And I have to add that I am very grateful that some of you have simply ignored those attempts. Recent retirees were arbitrarily terminated from classes they were supposed to teach just days before spring semester started. And now this. The Academic Senate treated as nothing more than a prop in a stage performance. Many of the actions that have been taken by the administration have been justified with the idea of making this college more like other schools. I'd like to tell you that the people who work here are very happy that this college is not like other schools. That this community college is the one that other community colleges try to emulate. Many of us are trying very hard to save the institutions that have built the reputation of this school. But we're barely hanging on. We need you, the Board of Trustees, to take more of an involvement in the decision-making process of this school. If you don't, if you cannot, then there isn't much hope left for us. Thank you very much.
Roger Marhine, followed by Karen Carlisi.
Good evening. I'm Roger Marhine of the English Division and the Faculty Association. We represent 900 part-time faculty, approximately 380 full-time faculty, teachers, librarians, and counselors. I can't recall a more tumultuous first 2 weeks of a semester in my 32 years at the college. I've been amazed, appalled, but also inspired. A range of emotions that's been quite extraordinary. I spoke at the December 14th Board of Trustees meeting just before the holidays, and I'm struck when I look back at what I said then. At that time, I noted a disturbing lack of respect for faculty. I want to say, Jane, I think brilliant minds think alike. My theme is respect as well, so good for you. This is a quote from what I said. In recent months, a basic collegial dialogue has been lost. Where is the human factor in our great college? Sadly, I've witnessed a painfully divisive us-them mentality, a demeaning, legalistic approach to problem solving. Unquote. That was December 14th. Things have gone from bad to worse. Now tonight, I'm amazed that the statements made in December have been painfully prophetic, though not meant to be prophetic. What I'd hoped would result in dialogue, collegiality, and respect has become a broken campus with no dialogue, a destroyed collegiality, and certainly no respect. An appalling disregard for faculty, staff, and students pervades the administration's every step. You are the board members who need to hear our call. Our pleas to you are nothing less than an attempt to save this college. I was in Sacramento this past weekend, both for the FAC meetings and lobby day, and also that wonderful March in March, attended by almost 130 PCC students. In the private conversations in the hallways, I was asked over and over, what's going on at PCC? Indeed, what kind of campus have we become? Where are we headed? The administration has demonized students who've had their classes slashed, their voices squelched, their backpacks searched, their basic educational rights denied. Where is the respect for our students? The administration has tossed aside retirees who have contributed so much to our campus by illegally firing them less than a week before their classes started. We have lost their value, their humanity, their expertise. Where is the respect for those distinguished faculty who paid so much service to the college? The administration has made a mockery of shared governance. The academic senate meeting a week ago was hijacked by a clumsy and woefully indecent attempt to control the dialogue with a rambling monologue that brought embarrassment and shame to us all. The administration has locked down buildings, locked out students and faculty, apparently, and attempted to lock us all in a grip of abusive actions. We have seen shocking escalation of tactics by the administration that's gone from a kind of clumsy unilateralism to outright bullying. Where is the respect for our campus people? 2 weeks ago, the college celebrated Jackie Robinson. The fact is that if Jackie Robinson were with us today, he would be protesting the cuts with us. Jackie Robinson understood racism, and the cuts always hurt people of color, the poor, single parents, working students the most. In the midst of these shocking actions, however, I've also been inspired. And I want to end tonight by saluting those who've inspired me by their courage. I salute the academic president, Edward Martinez, and the Senate leaders for their professional integrity in the letter they wrote. I salute the retirees who've reached out to the Faculty Association as we move forward to take legal action against the college for the illegal firing. I salute the college staff who put up with so much disruption of their workday and carried out their duties with grace and dignity. I salute the faculty who have worked so diligently these first few weeks to make this semester as successful as we can for our students despite the extreme uncertainties. I salute the students, finally, who have passionately and courageously made their voices heard, and I have no doubt that they will continue to do so. We are PCC faculty, staff, and students, and we are united, and we are not going away. Where is the respect? It is within us. We are PCC. Thank you very much.
Karen Carlisi, and then followed by Charlotte Williams.
Good evening. I'm here to read a memo that was written by a colleague who was not able to be present. And the memo is addressed to the Board of Trustees, Pasadena City College, from Howard Hertz, PhD, Professor Emeritus, Pasadena City College, dated March 7th, 2012. I retired from full-time teaching in 2006 after 30 years as a professor in the English department at our college. Before I was hired at PCC, I worked for 3 years as an adjunct faculty at other community colleges and in the state college system. I am writing to you at the request of other retirees who are concerned about part-time teaching positions at the college after their retirement. It goes without saying that our retirees, both classified and certificated, are a considerable resource, both in terms of the fund of experience they represent, as well as their ties to the larger community. We represent a significant reservoir of loyalty and goodwill. These are direct and indirect benefits to our students. The financial crisis in state funding is also familiar to us all. That some cutbacks and sacrifices are required by this reality is not news. But having, in the course of a long career, lived through a series of previous crises and having given them considerable thought, I agreed to try to communicate to you in a brief memo why I think dismissing retirees from adjunct positions is counterproductive. I've heard that word before tonight. Most full-time teachers have great respect for adjunct faculty, as I do. But we also know that the lower costs of adjunct instructors, both in terms of salary and, most important, benefits, is offset educationally by the realities of adjunct work. Faculty, as well as students, are members of a community centered at the department and division level where social and personal interaction foster consensus on educational standards and practices. Informal agreements, which go far beyond formal documents and outlines and which give meaning to them, are the source of much of the life and effectiveness of teaching. The inevitable lack of quote-unquote belonging, which is a condition of part-time work, deprives most adjunct faculty of participation in this agreement-making process. My own experience confirms this view. The overwhelming majority of adjunct faculty work very hard, as I did, and often work long hours, and their work is extremely valuable. But as in other areas of life, the college, to a degree, is bound to get what it pays for. There was a time about 35 years ago when some community colleges decided to save money by creating academic departments without any full-time faculty, or with only a small full-time cadre and 10 or 20 times as many part-timers. These efforts were disastrous for educational programs and for students and were curtailed by the state. The great advantage of employing in a limited way our retirees is that they have participated in the building of the shared values, which in time have produced a tradition of educational excellence at our school. This intangible value, a reputation, is an essential component of the quote-unquote working capital of PCC. While innovation can enhance it and publicity can enlarge awareness of it, it is fundamentally the product of many decades of incremental improvement arising not from quote-unquote superstar teachers, though we are grateful for their presence, but from the long-standing efforts of many hard-working instructors cooperating in the enterprise of providing an education to a very broad community of students. Once lost, a reputation for excellence is extremely difficult to restore. That is the risk of incremental erosion, of losing a blend of retirees in the pool of adjunct faculty. True, the limited employment of some retirees in an adjunct capacity does reduce the savings represented by younger and or less experienced faculty, but it does not eliminate these savings. The educational value, on the other hand, provided by most of our retirees as they help out in a limited way in overlapping generations is priceless.
Charlotte Williams.
Good evening, members of the board. Some of you I haven't seen in a long time. I'm coming to you tonight from several positions. One, I live in the district, I'm a taxpayer. Two, I'm an alum. And three, I'm a faculty member. Number one, I, as a faculty member, was a bit upset to find out, and literally be blindsided by neighbors, to find out that they're telling me that A, either I make too much, or B, I make too little. And some of them thought that I didn't really make that much. I didn't know my salary was listed publicly. As a common courtesy, the administration should have provided a simple email to all of the faculty and the staff and the rest of us, including the managers, to simply say, hey, we have an FOIA request. We are required to put your material out there in public. It would have taken exactly 5 minutes to do this through the faculty email system. It's a common courtesy. And while respect has been one of the themes here tonight, common courtesy is something that isn't really that difficult to do. Now, while the lawyers may feel that they didn't have to do that, even in the private sector, there is a general consensus that when you send something out with someone's personal information, you at least have the common courtesy to give them a heads up. That I would have expected, and in that regard, I am extremely disappointed in the administration, and I have to admit, disappointed in the board's comments about what the faculty makes. I really hate to admit this, but we do work very hard, even though some of you may not think so. Now, unfortunately, as an alum, okay, back in the old days, before we had things like multiple choice and or we worried extensively about our electronics, we were able to turn out a large number of students who went on to UC and other systems, and we performed highly successfully. From there, I went and got a degree in, God forbid, governmental management. And what I see now from my management courses, and by the way, it's from American in DC, so the people who trained me in administration and management are the people who actually run the federal career service. They don't mess up, because when they mess up, everybody else gets screwed up. So there's a big difference. What I'm seeing now would cause many of my professors to basically kill me if I were in fact on the administration. You as board members are elected managers, and I do not see management coming from you which is either effective, creative, innovative, factual, or even involved. Now, as an alum, I can make that statement. As a faculty member, I am extending to you an open invitation to sit in my classes and observe. My students will be civil because I don't have a lot of crud going on in my classes. That's my classroom management. My students, on the other hand, would like for you to sit in and observe. Because if you do not know what actually goes on in a classroom, then you can't necessarily manage it. That's basic management 101. You can go all the way back to the 1930s to see this written. So that is what I have to say in that regard. I'd love for you all to sit in these classrooms. And not just me, you should go on and sit in some of the other classes as well for the other members. In addition to that, on the subject matter of salaries, the students in one of my classes decided that they were going to address the salary issue in relationship to the limited number of students who could be added to class. On their initiative, they did this, I just sat and watched. They took the salary of one of the faculty members who teaches large group classes. They multiplied the number of students in her classes. They looked at the tuition cost, and it came out to over $400,000. They looked at her salary, and they divided the number of students that she had in the classes she taught per year, and it came out to approximately $43 a student. They decided, these are the students, not me, that that's even less than minimum wage. Now, I just sat there and watched them because several of them had used the term raked in as though, in fact, we were getting some enormous amount of money. After that, my students said, there's no argument. I really think it's time for you collectively and individually to visit. So I extend to you my invitation to sit in my classes anytime this semester. Thank you.
I want to thank all the members of the faculty and the public who took time to inform the board. I know that I learned something new each time by hearing something from the public and the board members, the faculty and the students. And even when they say things that I disagree with or don't like, like when Roger calls the administration demonizing students, I couldn't disagree with that more. I think that's way above the top. But at the same time, it's very helpful, both in Sacramento and here, to hear how you're perceiving things and to keep that interaction. I visit classes. I work on another university campus, and I visited classes here at PCC, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. And it's just something that I really appreciate, sharing that and getting that the points of view out there that will help me as a trustee weigh all the information that I have. But I also have to say, I can't say enough about the work that we're as a board are asking the administration to do to send provide that emergency response to students and making sure that the district is doing everything we can. And I want to express my appreciation both to the administration and the vice president and the presidents, but also for the passion that is obviously felt here. I think if we're all working together, as Roger and everybody said, and Crystal, I think we really have an opportunity to weather this storm. So moving on, we're going to go on to the next agenda item. We've gone through, we're on to item F, approval of consent items. Item 4, does anybody have any consent items that they wish to pull for a separate vote or discussion?
If not, motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion by Dr. Fellow and a second by Trustee Mann. Any discussion? Dr. Rocha, is there anything that you'd want to draw our attention to, or have any been withdrawn?
No, all of them are in order, and staff reviewed them this morning as our final check, and so staff and I forward them to you for your recommendation. I recommend them to you for your approval.
Okay. No, we're having a conversation. I have all the comment cards, and these are for on items I. So that's where those will be coming up under item I. Okay, is there, without any further discussion, we'll take our vote. Student trustee? Okay, all those indicate by using their device. Okay, the motion carries unanimously. But I do have, just so I will inform the public, I do have a number of requests to speak on various items. I have 5 cards, Eduardo Cairo, Matthew Sprott, Samantha Lozano, Roshan Aquila, and Roshan, and Mari Lopez on the budget item that is on budget item I. That's what it indicated on the comment card.
I said that I myself.
Okay, we're going on to item G, the College Planning and Priorities Committee, the Realignment Progress Report. I'll turn that over to Dr. Rocha for a report.
Yes, thank you, President Baum. This is a very, very brief report. It is under tab G in your agenda. The College Planning and Priorities Committee is a shared governance committee that has, since the fall semester, been reviewing the realignment, and they are working toward a recommendation, and this is a progress report, brief as it will be.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dr. Rocha. Thank you, members of the board. On behalf of the Planning and Priorities Committee, but more specifically President Martinez and myself, who are the co-chairs, and very specifically Matt Jordan and Lynn Wright, who are the task team leaders, I just wanted to give this brief report. I'm not going to go over this. You've got the packet in front of you, but you'll recall the 2 various charges that the committee was tasked with and that the groups are working on. And I just really wanted to point out a couple of things here, is that these 2 task teams will be getting together and joining forces, if you will, on March 19th, where they will be sharing out all of the work that they have done on the various topics that they are discussing. At that meeting, executive committee members and planning priorities committee members will be asked to observe the activities as they go forward. This information is going to be videotaped and available to the campus community and will be distributed en masse in that regard through our campus website. Then the team chairs will be meeting with Dr. Rocha soon thereafter to report out progress and to discuss where things are. The last slide that you see there really speaks to the work of the groups and how they are progressing. The intent is hopefully by the end of April to have some information that can be shared in a broader way with the campus community in terms of where this group is heading in terms of its discussions. So I'm here, President Martinez is here. I'm not sure if Matt or Lynn are here, but we can address or respond to any questions that you might have.
Are there questions from members of the board? Mr. Thompson.
These meetings are announced in advance publicly throughout the college? Yes, they are. They are publicized widely. They are open to anybody who wants to participate in the process, and certainly that kind of transparency will continue going forward. Are they attended by many people? Well, the teams themselves are relatively large. We've got at least 40 to 50 people, I believe, that are participating between the two teams. And certainly when we had our town hall meeting, we had a lot of attendance, and I anticipate at the second town hall where we will be reporting out, there will be significant participation as well. And at these meetings, the people who are in attendance and not one of the task force teams, they're allowed to speak and ask questions or make comments? Yes, as far as I know, they are. It's a very open process, and a lot of open communication is taking place.
And just as a reminder that we have elected representatives on the Planning and Priorities Committee, but the task teams were opened up to much broader participation than just those.
I think what we wanted, what I'm interested in, I think all my colleagues are, is that when this gets to us, assuming it does, we don't want people to say, well, I wasn't a part of the process, I didn't have a chance to participate, or to ask my questions or express my views, and we don't want that to occur.
Any other questions from other members of the board? Dr. Mann?
I just might say, Mr. Thompson, that I did attend the one town hall meeting, and I found it was very open. Anyone who wanted to could come to the microphone, could ask a question, and most of the comments after the presentations came from people who were sitting out in the audience. It wasn't like a discussion among the people at the table.
Good, thank you.
And I'll sound like a broken record, but I want to dial the clock back a year and a half. When we were going through our presidential search, we were on warning for our accreditation. One of the things that was pointed to was our planning process. And so one of the things we asked Dr. Rocha to do in conjunction with the rest of the administration is develop that educational master plan that became the roadmap for the way forward for the district. And then when we reconvened this year, we asked Dr. Rocha, now that we have the plan, we need you to implement the plan. And in our binders, and is posted for everybody, is the number one item that had to do with realizing the goals in the master plan was realignment. And so we appreciate that the process, being kept informed as to how the process is going forward, and also to hear that it is an inclusive process. Because I heard earlier that this was something that came out of the blue or was done in secret, and I want to make sure that that's the process as I recall it.
There's no question that it's a change proposal, but you recall, and I think several of the trustees were at the first meeting in September, in which I gave the state of the college, in which I first proposed out in the open the need to do a realignment to reduce the size of the administration. And well over a year ago, I did call for a process that would look at the budget crisis that is now worsening. So that clearly is on the record, and I think the positive thing, very positive thing, you'll shortly will receive kind of the unsung heroes, because I was at the town hall meeting, but it wasn't my meeting. I just sat there as a spectator, and I told them at one point that I thought that their thinking and their ideas and their solutions were extraordinary. And so we await with great anticipation the recommendation of the College Planning and Priorities Committee. The process will work, and we'll receive the recommendation and bring it forward here in the light of day. So, yeah, I think obviously we are dealing with a massive change agenda, but I think the process is constructed so that everybody can input, and many colleagues who are not here tonight, and students, I should say, are really just doing extraordinary work on this type of thing.
That's
so
correct.
I appreciate that.
And I'll just add very quickly here that this report was actually developed by Matt and Lynn and myself, and it will be posted on the Planning and Priorities website. Each one of our shared governance standing committees has a page, if you will, in the shared governance area, and this PowerPoint will be there.
Thank you, Vice President Miller. We're now going to move on to item H.
Jeff, if I may
oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Thompson.
One more comment. First of all, I want to thank Jeanette for the comments and for her going to the meeting. I really appreciate that. To say that this topic has stirred up some interest or controversy, I guess, would be an understatement. So what I really want to do is make sure that this is not perceived or in reality is not a done deal. We're going through a process where people can participate meaningfully and have the ability to influence the outcome. And so I think that's critically important that we conduct it that way. And I'm sure under your leadership, along with the others, that's what will happen. But I just wanted to make sure that very, very clear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bob.
Out of the meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago, we, as a board, also said, what concrete actions can we take to address the budget crisis? And so the Legislative Advocacy Committee was tasked with one of those items, and Dr. Rocha had actually put a charge to the board to consider some specific steps. So I want to turn this over to the Legislative Advocacy Committee.
Okay, well, we have two things. First of all, there is in your packet a resolution in support of the Community College System Budget Priorities and the government's November ballot initiative. The resolution was in the packet, so you've all had time to look at it. It was, it's rather complex in that it responds to several items in the governor's proposed budget. It is consistent with the chancellor's office position and was adopted unanimously by the California Community College Trustees Board. And the whereases, which are kind of long and complicated, actually this is a model proposal developed by the League, is being considered and in many instances approved by districts all over the state. I tried to find out today how many districts had approved this and received an email since the League has had to cut staff. They don't know, but that several of them have. But what you have here is a history of the cuts which have occurred to the community colleges on the statewide, and just a couple of things I would like to point out. Community college has been forced to turn away as many as 130,000 potential students in a single year due to the need to reduce course sections, generally from 5 to 15% annually per district. I would like to repeat that. Generally 5 to 15% annually per district. The students have been turned away. There has also been a 23% decrease in total funding. The per student funding has dropped from $5,659 in 2007 and 2008 to $5,115 in 2011, 2012, which is a loss of almost 10% per student. The governor has proposed raising the GPA average for Cal Grants and changing the Cal Grants, putting a cap on students who transferred independent colleges, which would disproportionately affect community college students and African American Latino students who tend to have a parental income, a low income. And the thing that I guess I want to just mention briefly, Mr. Baumann, as I said before, we're both in Sacramento, and have attended several budget presentations and also on the governor's budget, the governor's initiative. There's a $4 billion deficit in the budget for next year, proposed budget, and there are several initiatives, 3 initiatives maybe on the ballot. Only one addresses the budget, this budget initiative. If this initiative does not pass, there will be cuts to the state will have to find another $4 billion. We've been told $1 billion of that could come from education, and we don't know exactly what the community college's share would be, but it would make what happened to us this year not look so bad. When we visited legislatures, Assemblymember Paul Fong, who's a former community college trustee, referred to the potential budget as horrific, and that the cuts that he heard the students talk about yesterday would be nothing compared to this. So the resolution then is to ask the board to support the governor's initiative because of the potential disaster which could occur if it does not pass. And then there are a series of other resolutions that has to do with the proposed governor's budget. And I'll just go through these very quickly. In the governor's budget, there is a proposal to give to the community colleges money which the state will gain by abolishing the redevelopment agencies. This proposal says don't reduce our allocation for those monies until we actually receive the money. Some of you, as you're probably aware, we got this $2.8 million mid-year cut because the Department of Finance underestimated the amount would go for student loans and overestimated in property taxes. We would like to actually see how much redevelopment money will be available, if any. What we're hearing is the properties now that are supposedly up for sale have lost a great deal of their value. No one knows what much money will come available, so it simply is don't cut us until you know how much money there is coming in. The second is the governor has proposed with this money, which will allocated to the community colleges, to give us back some of the money that we have from deferment, the deferral buybacks. And what we're asking is, instead of that, to put a positive trigger in. We had a negative trigger this year, and we had that $2 million cut, that if there are additional funds, then instead of buying down debt, they would go to job training, student success, and veterans issue. The other is there is language in the budget which simply indicates that the Chancellor's Office and the Board of Directors should develop a new funding formula for community colleges. And the Chancellor's Office nor the Board of Governors particularly want to do this, particularly not in less than in a year. The next one is there's a proposal to cut Cal Grants, which again would have a disproportionate impact on community college students because they are the ones that usually come from the lower income families. Oppose the cuts to Cal Grants and child care programs that will eliminate opportunities for parents transitioning from welfare to work. And also opposes any fund to move the servicing of general obligation bonds from non-Proposition 8 to Proposition 8 funds, Proposition 8, which is the community colleges in K-12, and which in a sense is a cut for us. Okay. Now, that's a very complicated, I'm sure Dr. Van Pelt, who is a budget person, could have done a much better job than this. But what I'm proposing is this is a resolution that is being considered all over the state. It is consistent with the Chancellor's Office position, and it is consistent with the leagues. And so the committee recommends adoption of this.
Are there members of the committee that would like to speak to the resolution?
The committee, by the way, is Trustee Soto, Trustee Thompson, and Trustee Fellow.
Is there
no, I'm wrong. Thompson, Trustee Soto, Trustee Wong, and Trustee Fellow.
Is there a motion?
I move
approval. Second. Okay, motion by Trustee Soto, second.
Second.
Trustee Wong, I'll take Trustee Wong as a second, if you don't mind. And then Okay, what I appreciate is also the bylaw governing
Yes.
what resolutions that the board may act on and take is attached to the discussion so that it explains the process by which we may or may not consider a resolution. Any further discussion? Trustee Soto, do you have any? You made the motion. Did you want to make any comments?
None. I think this passing this resolution really is just a no-brainer considering the state in which we're in, just to make our stance clear on where we are in this budget situation.
Trustee Thompson?
Are there people from the audience who want to address this?
I had no comment cards on this issue.
Oh, okay, I thought you said earlier that you did.
No, this is the next. It's the budget of PCC. This is the state budget. The budget of PCC was the next item, and that's the one where I had a number of comment cards.
Question I have is there a time criticality of doing this evening? The reason I ask that question is that we don't have anything here that tells us what the governor's proposal or initiative is. We don't have anything telling us what the other initiatives are that are going to be in competition with this, or what happens if all pass or none pass or whatever. And it just seems to me that we will be better off deferring this and have a more thoughtful discussion with all the information available to us and to the public before we take action upon it. So I would prefer not to act on it this evening. There's a lot of information I don't have, and I'd asked for it last evening, but obviously that was a bit late to get it. So
I'm sorry, I didn't know you asked for it. Mr. Martin had asked for something similar to that, and it is available, but I didn't give it to everyone. I can give you a summary of the initiatives and probably actually the language of the initiatives, if that would be helpful. And I can also supply the language in the governor's budget, if that would be helpful, or I can supply you an analysis of the language in the governor's budget.
I would like to have any and all of that, but I don't think we can, speaking for myself, I don't think I can assimilate that on the spot here and be...
You can't assimilate that between now and the time we would vote? I don't think there is not any time urgency. I think it's important that we do something. I think when we go to Sacramento to advocate, it's good to say we have the board behind us. There are several bills that are starting their progress through the legislature, and it's good to have a board motion that we can, and the board position.
And I concur with all that,
right.
and I don't argue
so
with
I
you
don't
on
think
that,
if the rest of the committee
have the
doesn't,
information before we're taking action.
I don't think it would hurt to defer it.
I want to just put something out on the table,
Right.
just speaking, taking the privilege of the chair, too. I'm against new taxes. I'm a fiscal conservative. I'm not terribly sympathetic with the governor's budget approach. However, just having come from Sacramento, I do see, and we spoke with Republicans and Democrats, that in the interest of the district, I'm willing to set aside my personal point of view and make a vote that I think is in the best interest of the district. The urgency that I feel is when we speak to the campus community and they say, what are you as a board doing to respond to this crisis? And this is one of the opportunities where we can take a concrete action in response to a recommendation or request from the administration and take an action now rather than defer it for another. There are other actions that we hope to take, but I feel that it would be best to act as swiftly as possible using every tool that we have, whether it's legislative advocacy, whether it's other tools that are at our disposal to respond. And so I'm in favor of acting on it tonight.
So would it be terribly hard for us to wait till next board meeting? Would
That's all I would
have
be
an
asking
impact
for is
on it, or
the
not?
2 weeks.
I'll defer to the committee on that.
What do you think?
Trustee Waugh?
I would support Trustee Thompson's request to defer this until the next board meeting so that we all have enough information to properly evaluate.
Trustee Soto, the maker of the motion?
My preference would be to do this tonight, but if there are members of this board that do not feel comfortable making that decision tonight, I think we have enough time where we can defer, but I would urge us to take some sort of action, some sort of stance relatively soon going forward.
I'll make a motion then to table this.
Second.
To be removed from the table on the first meeting in April, is that correct?
I think we can accomplish that if Trustee Soto and Trustee Waugh are willing to withdraw the motion and without having to take action to actually table it. Is that
I agree to withdraw.
Okay, then we will do that. Thank you very much for presenting it.
Thank you very much.
And
we
if there's
will
any,
do that
if there's any information board members want, please let me know and I will send it. I will send all of you the information that I sent Mr. Martin. I don't know how helpful he found it, but I will send it to everyone. And in light of that, I would also, let's wait and act on the other part too, but the Legislative Advocacy Committee does have a set, and I think, did you receive these, the legislative principles and the legislative agenda? Did the other board members receive this? I asked it to be distributed. We'd like for you to consider this so that when individual bills come up, once we approve, the thinking is once we approve the legislative agenda, and then if they fit within this, we will not have to come back to the board. And so I would like to bring the whole packet back at the next meeting.
We'll put that on the agenda for the
Yeah.
April 4th
Right.
meeting. That meeting is getting quite crowded, so we'll talk about the schedule. Okay, we're now moving on to item I, and I don't want to make the students and the faculty who have been waiting to address the board on the PCC budget cuts wait any longer. So we will go first with the public comment, and then go with the report, and then recommended action. So we will start with Matthew Sprott, and then followed by Samantha Lozano.
Good evening. So there are two items I wanted to speak about. One was the salary. I looked at the salary page, and I noticed that some teachers, but primarily administrators, were getting paid, I think, more than what they should be getting. And I did the math. I'm not saying I'm not saying that we should do salary cuts right now because it's happening at a statewide level. I just think that administrators should not be paid as much, especially when we're in such a critical situation. But so we have one faculty member getting paid $230,000, another one getting paid $150,000, another one getting paid $190,000. So if you just remove their salary to make it like $130,000 a year, which is a very good living, I think, then we could have avoided all the class cuts just by cutting three people's salaries, $100,000 from one, $20,000 from one, $60,000 from another, and that would have saved 46 class sections if we're counting class sections as $5,000 apiece. So I just wanted to present that. I think that instead of trying to, first off, I want to applaud the graduation fund. I think the graduation fund is a good step forward. But I do think that in the future we should also look at lowering the salaries here, because I don't think the administration should be getting paid so much, especially when the students are suffering and the students are not getting the classes that they deserve. The second item I wanted to discuss is your new initiative, Spring Forward. Associated students, I talk with them on a frequent basis. They have expressed a lot of, I guess, enthusiasm to be part of. They want to be part of the decision making. Again, we talked about respect. We talked about being part of the decision making. And you mentioned task force, which is good. But associated students would also like to be part of, and I guess students as well, would like to be part of picking out what classes to put in Spring Forward. I mean, I think the administration can do a good job, but I think we should have student representatives in that deliberation process as well, so we can help plan what classes are going to be part of Spring Forward. So if you can just hear those concerns about the salary cuts, and as well as getting student representation for Spring Forward, the initiative, inside the actual planning meetings, or whatever committee meetings you have for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Samantha Lozano, followed by Rojan. And please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing Rojan correctly.
Good evening, Board. So I've come to speak to you tonight, to talk to you about the current budget cuts that have been happening. The state can only be blamed so much for the current budget cuts. Instead of blaming others I urge you, board, to take a charge, take responsibility. The Board of Trustees, I urge you to stand up against the current mismanagement of funds because the students are suffering. Now, I'm limited. I'm limited by material means. Dr. Ocha makes $260,000 more than I do. I'm limited by physical means. I'm currently sick, I have bronchitis, and I'm tired. But my passion and my dedication is immeasurable. My passion for PCC, my passion for the other students, my passion for education and knowledge is immeasurable. So I will continue my fight for change to the ends of the earth because I believe there is a change that needs to happen. The faculty, on another note, I think the faculty here is amazing. They deserve every single penny that they get paid, and it's a shame that they don't get paid more. It's a shame, and more than that, it's just sad that the administration's blatant disregard for faculty. And not only blatant disregard for faculty, but blatant disregard for students as well. It's just sad at this point. Now, Board of Trustees, I urge you to stand up and change. You have the power. You are elected officials, and you have the power to do something right, to do something different, to stand up. And I urge you to hold the administration accountable. Because, as Dr. Baum said last week, he talked about transparency. And transparency is not easy. Transparency is not hard. Or transparency is hard, excuse me. But with accountability, transparency can happen. So I urge you to hold the administration accountable. Change does not happen lying down. So I urge you to stand up and grab it. Thank you so much.
Roshan, followed by Andrew Bott.
Okay. I am glad that some progress has been made, but I have to be honest, some is not enough. I have heard of the rising tuition once again. That's another problem that students are having. The tuition should not have to go up because of budget cuts. We need to make cuts in some other places and not eliminate any terms such as winter intercession. It is said that PCC is one of the top transfer colleges. Let's keep that word and be a good school. And to your community college as it has always been.
Thank you. Andrew Bott, followed by Mari Lopez.
Hi. First, I wanted to thank you for letting me in this meeting. I was here 2 weeks ago, and I was one of the ones locked outside. So it is nice to be on the inside this time, and I do appreciate it. The student perspective on things so far has been that we were locked out of this meeting a few weeks ago after some major cuts to the college. We were locked out of the president's office quite a few times. Locked out of the academic senate. There's been a lot of locked doors on the campus, and I think you all need to know that, and need to know that it makes the situation that's already difficult for everybody and difficult for the students even more difficult when we can't have our voices heard. When we can't get into these meetings, when we're locked out of the shared governance that we're supposed to have, it makes it really difficult. It makes things really tough for us. Right now, we feel our voices are being locked out of the decisions of this college. And that the whole idea of this college, which is to educate folks, to have classes for students, to have great teachers that can continue to teach us, that we're not able to make decisions on this. I did attend the BRAC meeting, I believe, the Friday before last. And while they had some good ideas and some great discussions, and they did seem very serious about making choices and tough choices to choose a budget in very difficult times, what they were not focused on is keeping the classes that we have, continuing to provide students with an education, continuing to have teachers that can make a difference. What was not focused on and what urgency was not there was specifically saying, how do we keep providing an education to as many people as possible? How do we provide students with these classes? How do we continue providing these great services that we're known for? While the board seems very serious tonight, I also don't hear that from you all. I think what needs to happen is there needs to be a guiding principle that we are going to have classes and teachers come first over everything else. We get that it'd be great if we could do an upgrade on the computer system. We get that it'd be great if we could, make improvements on the campus. But I have to say, being a student, sitting in my class and seeing 10 people, seeing 15 people, seeing more students try to add classes and being turned away is really difficult to swallow when after class I'll walk by and see a new building being built for the music center. It's really difficult to swallow when we see such huge salaries. It's great, if you can earn that salary. That's great. I think the American dream is awesome. Working your way up, or getting a great salary for making a difference. But when we see classes and teachers not being prioritized, that's when we start to question those kind of salaries. When we see these classes not happening, when we see students being turned away, when we see classes being cut as a first priority, when there's a large budget cut, classes go first? Think about that. This is a community college, and the first thing we cut when we have sudden money we have to make up are classes? It doesn't make any sense. Right now we're seeing the American dream being threatened. You're seeing students who want to go to school, and because of the choices that you're making in this room, they're not able to. I think you need to think long and hard about the choices you're making every day. You need to think long and hard about the choices you could make over the coming weeks and the coming months so that students come first, so that classes come first, so that teachers come first. Everything else should be secondary. A beautiful new building for the music center, that's great. But what should come first? So I want to thank you for hearing me. I want to thank you for letting me in this time. And I hope that we continue this path in the coming few months. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry Lopez, followed by Professor Cairo.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Maricruz Lopez, and I'm a member of the public. I tried actually to enroll at PCC, but as a history major, there weren't enough history classes, so I couldn't get in. I'll be trying again for the next semester. But I'm here to say that I know that there have been some tough decisions that have to be made, and you have to look at the budget very conservatively. But the conservative thing to do is actually to restore all of the classes that were cut and to restore all of the faculty that were laid off, because students are going to keep fighting, and they're going to keep fighting until those classes are restored, and they're going to keep fighting until they win all of their demands. Public education across the country has been under attack for the last couple of years. I know this isn't news to you as educators and people in the field of education, but it's been especially attacked in California because California has had such a proud history of having a high quality public education and making public education public. And but like I said, California and especially Los Angeles is a city of proud fighters and proud defenders of public education. Every day there are people fighting in one way or another, especially undocumented people who get up in the wee hours of the morning, undocumented students who catch many buses and the train to get here and to fight for their education. And every day they win small victories, whether that be getting added into the classes that they wanted, or whether that be providing food for their family, for that day. But I want to tell you a story about this past year. In December, there were a group of Bravo high school students from Bravo Medical Magnet who fought and won. There were about 300 students who walked out of their high school to protest the budget cuts that were happening in transportation. I think maybe some of you have heard of it, but the Governor Brown was planning on cutting about $200 million in the public transportation for high schools, for K through 12. And these Bravo students found out about it, and they walked out, and they marched for over 3 hours in the sun, a lot of them getting a sunstroke. And they marched down Cesar Chavez Avenue in the heart of East LA. And their administrators told them a lot of the same thing that you guys are now telling students here. They're telling them no money. Where is the money going to come from? You can protest all you want, but we don't have the money. Well, they found the money. They found the money because those students were not going to take no for an answer, and they kept fighting. Well, that's the same thing that's going to happen here. Students are going to keep fighting. We're not going to take no for an answer. It's astounding to me how you guys went to school for this, to fight for us, to fight for students, to figure out where to get the money, and yet you're not doing it. So I'm asking you simply to do one thing. If you're not prepared to fight, then resign. Resign your position and make way for somebody who is prepared to fight. Because we're going to keep fighting, and let me tell you, we are determined to win. Thank you.
Eduardo Cairo.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. Let me begin by offering some reflections from our last meeting. The school decided to parade around Jackie Robinson's uniform, saying we're going to create a brand new uniform, which is great. While it was happening, I was asking myself, well, I wonder where the money came for this. Where did it suddenly appear? Here we're cutting classes, but we have money for new uniforms. Maybe we found a donor to pay for this. Fantastic. Maybe we can ask them to pay for some classes. Then at the same time, ironically, I'm thinking, here we are celebrating a man. But what are we celebrating? His achievements on the baseball field, or what he did to break the racial barrier? Because I'm sure he underwent process in which he was denied due process. And here we are, at the day that we're commemorating Jackie Robinson, locking out students. I don't get it. What are we going to do next time for Cesar Chavez Day? Perhaps we can send the names of all the undocumented students to ICE so they can round them up. I mean, what other reason could there have been for the student cadets to be recording the faces of all the students that stood up? I don't understand the reason for that. The issue of the contract salary. I brought up, well, if you want to get rid of some costs by reducing the full-time faculty, bringing some part-time faculty, why don't we do the same for the executive committee? Eventually it was responded, well, we can't do that. We have a contract. Simply can't do that. The Board of Trustees, I don't know if you discussed this behind closed doors, but none of you questioned that, saying, you know what, you have a right. Legally, we cannot reduce their salary because they have a contract. But how about taking the next step? Their contract does expire. Don't renew it. It's that simple. I didn't hear anyone ask that statement. In regards to the report on the U building that stated that it was unsafe, I asked the committee, how many more buildings on this campus are unsafe? Are they as equally unsafe as the U building? And did the report specifically state it's necessary to shut it down? I don't know. A trustee mentioned in the newspaper how the faculty is hoarding classes. Where do you get that from? Do you think we have the power to hoard classes? No, we don't. What we do have is the passion to teach. Now, as far as the salary goes, it was mentioned during negotiations a few years back. Ernestine Moore was here. When the union is fighting to get a higher salary for the faculty, her response is, hey, if you want more money, work more. We are. And suddenly, now that we're working more, earning more money, I don't know how or when, but the faculty has become the bad guy. And we see this by the school callously presenting the information of the salaries. Now, to me, it doesn't matter, but I do ask the question, how many other colleges in the state have done the same thing? I don't know. It was also mentioned that in regards to the bill, the vote that will be up for the state, someone in response to that was, well, I know it's not going to pass. I'm thinking, really? Where is your magic ball that says the voters will not pass this bill? Is that personal opinion, or do you have some inside source for this? I don't know either. Bottom line is that what we're seeing over the year is a series of bad choices. There was a meeting we had this week, and in this meeting it was stated that the school since 2007 has had an average of $5 million left over. We're cutting classes, but we have $5 million left over. Why was the choice made to sweep this money into a different account? Why could it not be used for more classes? I don't know. There was the issue of money. We have this U building issues and options update. Multi-purpose field, $839,000. Property acquisition, $6 million. Warehouse, $3 million. Telecommunications, $236,000. This is money that the school had, and suddenly, now that they needed money for a U building, these funds were transferred over. Why could they not be transferred over to the classroom? I don't know. Finally, Bill Davis, the KPC executive director, I believe, he asked a statement, where is America going to be in the next 20 years? Are you still here? I don't know, because I do have your answer. If we continue with these cuts, we're going to be in a very, very bad position. Thank you.
And now I want to turn it over to the Budget Resource and Allocation Committee to talk about the plan going forward. So, Dr. Roach, I'll turn it over to you, and I believe we have the co-chairs of the committee here.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Baum. I'd ask Vice President Van Pelt and Keith Oberlander, Professor Oberlander, to come forward. This is a report, I and J, okay, to make clear. And perhaps while this is going on, if it's possible to get back on the internet, can you get us rewired there? Because there have been a number of colleagues who are kind enough to come today and make some comments, and we've put all the facts up on the website for everybody to see. And there's some very, very good answers to those questions. We want to make sure that everybody has them. But first of all, I want to thank Rick and to thank Keith, because there are examples of shared governance at work. For example, Eduardo, who's leaving, one of the ways that those questions that you were asking, if you came to the Budget Committee, that Keith is a co-chair of, those questions could be put to the Budget Committee, because they're wrestling with those questions right now. And so those will come forward as recommendations from the committee. What the Budget Committee is going to do is give a very, very brief report and then open for questions of the board, what it's working on right now. And for this item and the next item, the Budget Committee and the Enrollment Management Plan are asking for endorsement of principles. We are not asking the board to authorize any actions. The operational actions, that is how to do it, is a matter of shared governance and recommendations that will come forward back to the administration and back to the board. But in order to move forward, as they do every year, the Budget Committee, in this case, makes a set of principles out of which it's going to operate and begin to deliberate to make the budget for both this year, because we have to find the money for the cut, and for next year. So with that, and then similar to the Enrollment Management Plan, which is J, they're kind of tied together because obviously the budget and the class schedule is the biggest investment in the budget. Again, the Enrollment Management Plan will make clear how we're spending the money, and again, a set of principles that we're asking the board to be very, very open about it, and this is what the shared governance is working on right now. So, Rick and Keith, thanks so much for waiting to come on.
Thank you. We did have a Budget and Resource Allocation Committee meeting. It was very well attended. I think that all members were present. And one of the things that we did do is we went over, and I think this is in your packet, of these guiding principles and directions. There are a number that are not yet on the list because we haven't fully vetted them and worked them out, but these are the ones that we collectively agreed would be the guiding principles and directions. So what we're asking for is for your thumbs up on these, that these are the ones that that we can begin with, and as we develop others, we will come forward with more. I'd also like to point out that we have another BRAC meeting this Friday, 12:30 in the Circadian. And all people are welcome, and of course it is videotaped and then posted to the web. So we're making a lot of progress. There's a lot of work to be done. We're dealing with this on two levels. First of all, the current year $2.85 million issue, and then next year's what we're expecting to be a $6.5 million issue.
Great. Thanks, Rick. While you open it up for questions to the trustees, would you mind seeing if you can click through to get to the budget resource and allocation page, in which all this information is available. Okay, if you click there, there's Rick, and
just want to read something that's because it speaks to a point that one of the students raised, Andrew, but the number one item on an overarching principle that you're asking us to adopt is that the impact of the state budget on PCC student access would be minimized. Is that so? You're asking us to adopt this set of principles in the development of the budget?
Yes.
Right. I saw Dr. Mann's light on.
I was just going to say the same thing, but I also wanted to read the number 2 principle. Overarching principle is the impact of state budget on full-time PCC employees will be minimized. These have been the overriding principles out throughout the budget crisis. I would certainly hope that we would continue with these. And I'm really sorry that most of the people who have commented on the budget are not here to hear the discussion. I'm very pleased the one student who raised the question is sitting there in the back. I will certainly support this, and I think if you read through the rest of these, they all seem reasonable. What I think is really important to note is on many of these, it's like may. We may do this, we may do that. So there's options, but in the overarching principles, there's no verbs. It's like these are the principles, this is what we develop our budget around. And the other thing I would like to say is, I won't put Trustee Follow here on the spot, but it's my understanding that all employees of state agencies have essentially received a 10% salary cut because of furloughs. I know the chancellor received a 10% salary cut, And I think it's important for, particularly for the students to understand that in these past 5 years, no one on PCC has been furloughed. There have been no salary cuts. Everyone has received their step as salary increases. There have been no cuts in benefits. And compared to the cuts across the state, where thousands of classes have been cut, no classes have been cut here until this semester, and then it was a very small number. So I think if you look at the picture, what's going on in the state and what our principles are, I think you'll see the board is really struggling with this in the administration, which doesn't mean we can't do better, doesn't mean we're not interested in hearing from you, and because I think the more different people's ideas we get, the better decision we're going to make.
Professor Oberlander, do you recommend that the board adopt these principles as presented by the committee, and do you have anything you'd like to add?
I don't have anything to add, but I do recommend that this be approved.
Are there any other questions? Because there are quite a few items that are that will, if we take action today, we're directing the administration to pursue this as in the formulation of the budget that will be brought back to us. And some of them are very detailed.
Just
Dr. Rocha.
in closing, I would ask the entire college, all of our colleagues, faculty, staff, and students, to consult this page. As you scroll up, you'll see that this is shared governance at work. The decisions are difficult. If you can scroll up so we can see the screen, Rick, you'll see this is a duly constituted committee of the college shared governance, and you see the broad participation. I ask you to contact these colleagues to come to the meetings and weigh in, and to look at the video of the meeting so that you can look at how this group of colleagues is wrestling with a very, very difficult problem that we have as far as the budget side. But the other thing that I would ask is that one of the things that that I really want to congratulate every colleague on the committee, and there's varying views on this committee, and if you watch the tape, you will see spirited discussion, which is what ought to occur. But it's not all about cutting the budget, is it? One of the things that's here in these principles is that part of this is a revenue. And one of the things that you're working on with colleagues is how to develop new sources of revenue, since it is more likely than not that our state revenue won't increase much. And then finally, Rick, you have if you look just as one example, and we've all reviewed these in detail. On the second page of the principles, here's something from instruction. And the first principle is low enrolled class sections will be canceled prior to start of semester. Okay, now that sounds like a pretty tough one. Okay, in fact, some of the students and some of the faculty would complain about that. You cut 46 sections, okay? And technically, that's true. But Rick, you have this way of explaining the 46 and the 11 that we put back that actually resulted in an increase of seats and service to students. So could you just go over that for the board, because I thought that was an effective way of putting it.
We did cut 45 sections, which impacted 428 students. So you do the simple math, and what that means is there were fewer than 10 people for each one of those sections. So the initial point to make is that the students themselves didn't want those sections. Then what Dr. Bell is doing is in adding 11 or 12 sections that are fully enrolled of the sections that the students actually do need, we can serve more students. So if you can have 35 or 40 people for each one of those sections, there's a net gain by reducing 34 sections. So we actually serve students better while we've cut the expenditure side.
I have a question really quickly. On scale, how many sections are we offering this semester in the spring? Roughly.
Bob Miller or Bob Bell?
300.
I have an exact number here in a second.
It's in the enrollment management.
Yeah. Okay,
About
2,300.
Yeah, we have
we'll get
2338 to be exact.
So we'd cut about 45, but we added about 10 more in that. One other question I just had that a student had raised What's the budget, the total budget this year for Pasadena City College operating?
About 114 million, though it'll be reduced.
And then how much is that less than last year?
That is about $6 million plus the mid-year budget cuts.
And then how much more are we going to cut?
Well, it'll be another 5, so it'll be 11.
So about 11.
In the 2 years, it'll be 17.5 we're expecting. 17.5 million off a base of 120 million.
Were classes the first item that was cut when we experienced that budget reduction?
No, no, no.
What other cost reductions have been put in place before we went and cut some sections?
Well, the very first thing that we did is we didn't hire new people. We hired 22 new faculty. We hired no managers. We left a lot of the positions vacant so that people would have to do 2 and 3 jobs.
How many unfilled vacancies are there right now?
127.
And how many of those are faculty as opposed to administration?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but our full-time faculty obligation number is on target, so it means that we're fully committed in terms of the obligation number.
So the unfilled positions, though, is it more administrative positions that have gone unfilled?
It's probably, it's very significant in terms of managers and classified workers. And it's more classified workers just because the count is higher. So I think we've reduced something like 20% of our management ranks. And in some cases, the classifieds, they're probably, and this is a guess, but there are probably 80 vacant classified positions out of the 127.
Yeah, that's the question I have. So did you want to go to the next item, or did you want to recommend action on this?
I would ask, everything depends on the work that BRAC is doing, and so I would ask to accept the recommendation to endorse these principles.
So moved. I'll second that. I also want to say that today the state universities, it looks like after November, if things aren't better, we're looking at a $15 million cut per each of the 23 campuses, which is devastating. Mm-hmm. And most of the campuses have enacted the principles that you have here. And the other thing I wanted to say is I believe that PCC really has to start managing its enrollment. We should not be allowing more students to come into the college if we don't have the courses. It just doesn't make sense. I'd rather see us to close enrollments than to have more students come in and not get classes, which makes them more frustrated. But and then finally, what Jeanette brought up is that this is one of the few public higher education institutions that did not furlough. Last year, every state university was furloughing. Some of the community colleges were. And so I think the administration here deserves much credit for that. So that is my second, and I think this passes.
Trustee Thompson.
Just to try to address some of the points that were made. One, and Ms. Cooper can correct me if I'm mistaken on this, or Dr. Rocha, but tuition is set exclusively by the state, not by this college or any community college. So we don't have any control over what the tuition is what we have to charge, number one. Number two, as a matter of law, you just can't come along and cut salaries. I mean, Dr. Bell could agree to take half of his salary and go on with that, but if he doesn't agree, you can't just do that, period. I mean, the gentleman who raised the point could agree to take a cut in the salary for that matter as well. Anyone can do that, or we can furlough people. But as has been pointed out, we've avoided doing that and been successful at avoiding doing that. But so to look at salaries of administrators or faculty or anybody else as a source of revenue is just not realistic. We are guided by legal principles, and we can't just come along and say to administrators or faculty members or classified or anyone else, gee, sorry, you're just going to get half the money you're entitled to get, and we can not renew your contract, yes, but that's just really not addressing the problem. So the final thing I would say that the money for the music centers being built has come from, I guess, the Measure P project plus private contributions specifically for that purpose. And Dr. Van Pelt, correct me if I'm wrong, but we cannot take that money that's been earmarked for that and use it for other purposes. Is that right?
It would be illegal to do so.
All right. Thank you.
Trustee Soto.
Well, I just wanted to, one, say that as a member of the BRAC committee as well, and also we have our other member of the Associated Students member, Daniela Reda, in the audience right now, who also sits on the BRAC committee. Very long and interesting meetings. I'm sure Dr. Van Pelt would agree. And I think there is due consideration still to be done in the budget process. But I think we can move forward with some of these. And I did want to say, I saw my colleague Simon raising his hand like he wanted to make a comment. So if the board would allow.
It was actually just that I wanted to clarify. The AS is engaged in the process because you can't see it from the list here, but we have 2 students appointed and actively working, Alex Soto and Daniela Reda, who is here as well.
And could the other shared governance groups speak to their role in that, in the process as well, just to confirm or where that is?
Well, in terms of the committee membership, as you can see, there is a co-chair, a co-chair position, a faculty co-chair and an administrative co-chair. The faculty co-chair is Keith Oberlander. He was appointed by the Academic Senate. And then there are 3 faculty representatives, Tom Berg from nursing, Dustin Hanvey from English, Danny Hammond from CEC. They represent the faculty at large. And they have, I know that they have all participated actively on the committee, and that they are indeed working on these principles and coming forward with specific suggestions that will be voiced at the BRAC meetings.
Is anybody from the classified Senate here left?
Actually, I would just like to say I commend the classified just also for their role on the BRAC committee. They have been known to take a very active role in the BRAC committee discussions. And I think it's important that we put on the record that BRAC is very inclusive when it comes to the participation of the members on the committee, though sometimes considering like the February surprise, we get information a bit too late sometimes. We do what we can as a committee to move forward with these recommendations and with these guiding principles.
And just ask the managers to weigh in.
Yeah, the Management Association has 2 appointees. Kent Yamauchi has been on there for a long time, and it's actually John Woods, because Gary Wood has gone back to teaching. So.
And I did talk to Gary Potts, who
Okay.
apologized for not being able to be here tonight, and he's the Senate classified Senate representative, and I think Denise had to go.
David Krause is the other BRAC representative.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second on the floor, but I want to make sure all trustees have an opportunity to ask a question or weigh in before we take action, because there are profound ramifications of the action we're about to take. But I wanted to check before. Trustee Waugh or Trustee Brown haven't had a chance to offer.
I really don't have any comments other than, I think this is a great collaborative effort, and I'm really happy to see these initiatives. So thank you all.
Trustee Brown, did you?
I agree with Linda. This is very good, and it's basically what we have. It's a regular process of going through every point to ensure that our ultimate goal is to preserve student resources and faculty. Those are the 2 primary things that we always focus on. And I would like to also add that I know we are going through some very difficult times. And I applaud the students for voicing their opinions, because that is very important. But you also need to understand that we all are going through the problem. There is no magic anywhere. It is the reality. You may think there is money hidden. There's always, but those are things that I probably would be thinking also if I did not understand and I was not part of the process, to know that certain monies go to certain areas. In particular, I have always asked questions about the U building. That was one of my biggest questions that I raised several times. Why do we have to vacate the U building? But the fact that the people's life are much more important than anything else. And
Once you have been given the notice that this building is unsafe, it's now your responsibility to make people's life safe. It may never collapse, but because it's in writing, it is our job to ensure the safety of the employees. So please let us go through the process. Let's go through it in a very, it's difficult, but we will go through this. And there's one thing that you may not agree with me with, but since I came on this board back in 2008, one of my questions that I always ask was, why is it that if we do not have the resources to enroll students, why are we enrolling more students than we actually get paid for? That was always one of my questions. And I learned from the previous administration was, well, we sort of, because we want to help our students, we take monies from different accounts because we want to help our students. And I was very impressed with that. But today we're at a point where there's no monies, any more monies anywhere to be taken. So this is why you're probably feeling the pinch much more. And we did not do like most of the other colleges did. We sort of played around trying to just stretch and do the best we can. Maybe that was not such a good idea after all, huh? So basically, we really need, all of us need to understand that we are going to get through this. We are going to get through this, but we need to be civil. We need to develop a real civil discourse and make sure that we don't offend in the process, because it doesn't help us to come and tear down Dr. Rocha or tear down the students or tear down the trustees. We're trying our best. So that's what I've been in my heart, and you got it.
There's a motion and second on the table. Dr. Mann, the last word.
Just very, very brief. First of all, I'm really sorry that the faculty and most of the students who raised these points are no longer here to hear this discussion, because I would like to hear from them how this committee, which we've gone over all the points for, and we can't do it now, is not composed of shared governance. How students are not involved, how faculty are not involved, and how managers are not involved when this is the group that will be making the recommendations. The other thing that I would like to say is Citrus College, which is one of our sister campuses about, 15 miles from here? At the beginning, to follow up on what Trustee Brown said, at the beginning of the economic crisis in California, it did cut. 5 years ago, they had 13,000 students. Today, they have 10,000 students. We have not done anything like that, but imagine how many fewer sections we had had if we had made the decision at the beginning of the financial crisis to cut, which is what they did. I mean, it's another way of approaching it. And they now are not cutting classes because they have nothing left to cut.
So we're going to go to a vote unless you had something you'd like to add, Mr. Martin.
I'm going to save mine more fittingly for item M.
Okay. So we're going to go to a vote, the advisory vote. Okay. All the other trustees indicate using the device. The motion carries unanimously. Okay. Now we're moving on to item J, the enrollment management. Thank you very much, Professor Oberlander.
And Keith, thanks so much. And as I introduced Bob for actually no presentation, and just to put up item M, this is a similar item, enrollment management principles, not actions, but guiding principles that will guide the shared governance. I did want to say, because I know that the hour is getting late, I did want to thank, for example, Dan and Lauren and Charlotte, who have remained and made their comments. I did want to make a couple of points clear about the shared governance. Okay, on all these shared governance committees, the president does not attend. In fact, I specifically removed myself from the college council so that there would not even be the appearance that the president comes, manages the meeting, and gets the result that that he or she wants. Because someday, you want to take care of the office, and if you will, not the person. The other thing I do want to say on the issue of even at the totally botched academic senate meeting, which I readily admit to, I went to that meeting because I was invited. I would never attend any Senate meeting, any classified Senate meeting, unless I was issued a specific invitation. And again, I apologize for the botch. But I would say, in terms of shared governance, there is not a single, not one, not a single recommendation that has come forward from the Academic Senate in academic and professional matters that I have not accepted. Not one. So I asked the Senate to continue to do its work, its brilliant work, on academic and professional matters. And that serves as a segue to enrollment management, because this is where, if you will, the students who have spoken tonight are most concerned. If I am a student, and today we are going to try and move the language of enrollment so that it's more plain English. If I am a student, if I am any student, I am concerned not so much about sections, if you will, but whether I have a seat in a course that's going to advance me to graduation. And one of the enrollment management principles that we have here is to do exactly that. Vice President Van Pelt showed, again, as a fact, that despite the fact that we reduced the number of sections somewhat, that reduced the cost, we actually increased student enrollment. And that's the guiding principle, is human beings, is how many seats. I completely agree with the gentleman who last time said, hey, I walk into the class, there's empty seats there, okay? I want you to know the administration proposed last year to fill the room size, and we're working with the Senate to completely revise the add-drop policy so that teachers are free to take additional students. The key concern is by making sure not that we just have sections, but we have the right seats for students to advance our goals. And so with that, in fact, I completely stole Bob's presentation, and I did it deliberately, but he's a good guy and he knows. And here are the principles, and Bob will briefly review this first page and ask if you have any questions, trustees.
And the simple action that we are asking is that the board consider endorsing these planning principles so that Dr. Bell and the deans and the Office of Enrollment Management can begin building the 2012-13 schedule. So briefly, you'll just see the bullet points here. Our funded FTES projected for next year is 18,548. We are planning not to go over more than 2% of that, so 370, that's considered healthy in terms of how colleges, community colleges build their schedule. We're going to make our first year experience and our pathways a priority, so we're going to build those into the schedule first. We're going to work towards a completion agenda, which you've all heard about. The graduation fund that the foundation and Dr. Rocha and others are working on, those monies will go to what we call high demand degree and transfer courses, so we'll add those back. And as Dr. Rocha referred to or related to, we have the notion of maximum enrollments per the FTES funding that we receive. So we're going to maximize enrollments on that basis, not talk in terms of sections, but talk in terms of enrollments and seats in chairs, if you will. And then we're going to prepare a contingency, and I emphasize the word contingency plan, for a trimester model, should that be a direction that the college goes to.
You need a motion of support, do you?
What's the recommended action?
The recommendation is to endorse these guiding principles so that the Enrollment Management Committee can bring forward a recommended class schedule for 12-13.
So moved.
Second.
With passion.
Okay, so there's motion and a second. Dr. Mann,
Sorry, I do have a question. The graduation fund will be, those classes, those students, those sections will be funded not from the general fund. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Will they count towards our cap, towards our FTE?
The answer is
No.
exactly.
No.
Yeah, the answer is we will not report them on our 320.
Maybe Dr. Bell can talk a little bit about what the graduation fund is about, but again, those, notice that one of the principles is that we're saying we're going to go over our FTS.
Right.
We're not saying that we're going to stick to our funding.
I understand that.
We're going to go over our FTS, but that graduation fund is totally incremental and additive for additional sections that Dr. Bell judges are needed to progress students to completion. Do I have that right?
That's correct. And one minor exception, I won't be doing this exclusively. Obviously, I'll do this in consultation with the deans and with student groups and everybody else, so it won't be me exclusively. The graduation fund will, in fact, fund those classes, if you will, which will go over and above what we targeted for our enrollments, but will be focused to, again, increase the opportunities for students to get those classes they need to complete degree, transfer, or certificate.
The reason I ask that, I think that is a very important point
Right.
to be made, particularly if we go out into the community to raise money. I think it's a very important point also for the students. And it's my understanding that non-resident students also are not counted towards our FTE. It's only the students that we get general fund money for.
That's
Is
correct.
that correct? So when you see this number with a 2% over it, that doesn't mean that's all the students we will have. That just means this is the students we aim to have funded from general fund.
The state sends us a check for this number,
Right.
$18,548, not a penny more, okay? What we're saying is we're going to go 2% over that, okay, which is kind of a normal, variation over. And in addition to that, and I'm glad you raised the point, the graduation fund is for additive sections. So if we reach our goal, and I think that's quite possible, if we were to reach our goal of $1 million in that fund, every single cent of that will go for extra classes, but not just any class. The classes that instruction thinks are most needed for students to progress towards graduation.
Two quick questions that I have. One is, though, in reality, though, too, this is still a reduction over what we were funded for this year, correct?
Absolutely.
And how many is that?
That's 1,050 FTES, so it's about $3.5 million or something like that in lost revenue.
So this is part of the hit that we're taking from the state, the reducing the number of students that we're able to serve. Number two is...
$5 million. It's actually $5 million.
And speaking of what we'll hear in the community, it has been a board priority to find ways to improve matriculation from in-district students. How is that addressed by enrollment management?
The Enrollment Management Committee is currently working under the leadership of President Martinez to revise the enrollment priorities policy, and we expect to have something to the board possibly as early as the next meeting.
Right, and if I could add, well, hopefully the next meeting. Maybe.
Possibly as early as the next meeting.
We are indeed looking at policy 4020 on enrollment management and looking at those issues about registration priority for continuing students, new students, including the issue of in-district high school students. But we want to make sure that we get it right, so we are discussing making sure that we are drafting procedures that are compliant with Title V, and we will get that to you as soon as we can.
Thank you. Any other trustees that would like to ask a question?
May I make a comment on that? After having just sat through the Board of Governors meeting and serving on the Student Success Task Force, I would think if you find some impediment to this in Title V, you should ask the Board of Governors for a waiver, because I think there is a lot of sentiment in the legislature among the people who support community colleges that the local boards can do this now. They should go ahead and do it, and I think we should do it. And if we can't do it, we should show them why and try to find a way to do it.
Okay, we'll go to the vote, advisory vote. Okay, all other trustees indicate using your device. The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Vice President Miller.
I'll ask Vice President Miller to stay for the accreditation report, which is actually again a college-wide shared governance effort. The action you have before you in your packets, trustees, the accreditation midterm report. We are required by our accreditor to submit a report that is actually due March 15th. Bob and a large group of colleagues have been working to prepare the report that you see before us, and I've reviewed it in detail. We offer it to you for any questions or comments, but I offer it to you the action that we are asking is for your acceptance of it, because the board and the shared governance groups actually have to sign this, as you can see on the fascia page, actually have to sign it so that we can submit it to the ACCJC, our accreditor.
Okay.
So that about covers that.
Yeah, I think it really does, Dr. Roach. I do have the signature page.
We'll just move to questions, if you don't mind, unless there's something particularly urgent you wanted to raise on that.
No.
Okay. I'd like to entertain a motion to...
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. Now I'd like to see if there are any questions that we have the packet in our...
I have a comment.
Okay, comment.
Yes, I would like to say that there were 12 districts that were put on warning or probation in this last accreditation sequence. And I think I support this. I think it's extremely important that we send this, but it's even more important that we do everything in there that we say we're going to do. And if there's any possibility that we're not going to do it, we should take it out and take it out now, because if we say we're going to do all these things and do not do them, we can be sure when they come back that we're going to be in trouble. So this is very ambitious if you look at it. I look very carefully at what was done and what was in progress, and as usually happens, a lot more is in progress than is done. So I guess I'm asking Dr. Rocha, do you feel confident that we can do all these things as indicated in this report?
I'm absolutely confident. In fact, if anything, I've asked the group, asked Bob and the group, and I will ask Bob to kind of single them out for thanks, because this is extremely difficult work. If anything, I've asked them to be conservative in their, these are not assertions. These are demonstration of outcomes, which is the only thing that the ACCJC wants. And as the report says, that twice in 2009 we were placed on warning ourselves. So we were taken off warning because the shared governance worked together to correct and to respond specifically to the recommendations. This is our midterm report, and where we go from here, I'm completely confident of the report. Where we go from here, believe it or not, is that next year we begin our self-study for the new cycle.
Right. So, and if I might add quickly that this is a midterm report. We're obligated to report on what our improvement plan. When we set forth our self-study, we had what we call the planning agenda, and we promised to the commission and to the visiting team that we would address the 25 items here. And as a midterm, we are obligated to provide a progress report. And I can assure the board that there are many, many people at the college working very diligently to make certain that these things can and will be accomplished. The blessing in being involved in the warnings, if you will, if there is a silver cloud there, or silver, whatever I'm saying, lining in the cloud, is that it required us to address the recommendations very, very specifically in order to get off of warning. So we made good progress on that. So I am confident that that the work of the roughly 30 people that has gone into this, with the lion's share of the work in compiling the report going to Crystal Colross and Dustin Hanvey, our Vice President of the Academic Senate, we are indeed very, very well suited as we move forward. And as Dr. Rocha mentioned, as early as this summer, we will have an accreditation, faculty accreditation lead appointed, and we will start our self-study process again. So for 3 years from now, we're all set to go.
Well, let's go to a vote then. Unless the trustee has a question to take the advisory vote first. Okay, all the others indicate by voting. Motion carries unanimously. Let me express on behalf of the board our appreciation, because this, I know, is not an easy process, and you're grappling with so much. But the report demonstrated a true tremendous effort on behalf of so many within the district and shows the path that the district is on, and is one that I'm very excited about.
On behalf of everyone, we thank you.
I do, Trustee Baum, again want to thank the trustees in these actions on I, J, and K. You have cumulatively through these actions shown your guidance and your stand. Certainly, your values and your priorities are quite clear, and we were following that guidance in terms of our commitment to students. And one thing, again, that the practical result of all these actions, I, J, and K, is thunderous and ground moving, because what we're saying as a result of all this is that next year, even though we may have fewer sections, we will have the same or more seats to serve students. All the students are here, and all the students to come. And I think that's an extraordinary achievement on the part of everyone, faculty, staff, and students. So with that, a change of pace.
Sure. Now, I'd like to move on to item L, and one of the items I want to refer back to is our annual goals. And one of our annual goals that we articulated back in September was on sustainability and charge the administration to help us achieve some of these goals. So I want to turn it over to you and then hear what your recommendation is on that area.
Yes. I, again, present Dr. Van Pelt. This is right in the middle of our sustainability goal, and it's an extraordinary step forward for the college in its sustainability goal.
And
I'm sorry.
before we start, we do have a member of the public. Would you like to make the presentation and then hear public comment? What's your preference?
The pleasure of the chair.
I think it would be best to go hear our public comment first. I realize that. And then you'll have an opportunity to address any issues in the board. We have a public comment card on this item from Jason Carmen. Is he still with us?
So, hello. Good evening. I actually, while I'm not feel too unevenly about using fossil fuels, because it uses natural gas for the fuel cells, the power of the two cells to 400 systems. I still think it's the best option out there, other than what we have currently in technology for solar, wind, to meet our baseline what we need for the college for the power lights. And so this is the contract. So I see what we should be moving forward to. I appreciate the district for not using any money to pay for the systems, and that it would actually be saving at least $11,000 a month in energy savings, which could go towards other items or just in reductions. Therefore, I'm in favor of the contract with UTC Power. And so actually, I looked it up, and it looked like working with NASA since 1977, and basically almost old as that U building. Anyway, and I also know anything off topic. I noticed on campus that you guys are it's reduced your energy consumption. Like in the library, I noticed half the lights are off, and you're reducing your energy consumption. So you're going to bring up more renewable energy and reduction. So that's pretty awesome. Sorry, I'm just a little late.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
A good student today.
Yeah. So I'd like to then hear a brief presentation and then a recommended action.
So we are proposing to enter into an agreement, to negotiate an agreement with UTC Power for an 800 kilowatt fuel cell. Fuel cell derives its energy through an electrochemical process rather than combustion, which greatly reduces the carbon dioxide output of it. It produces electricity, it produces heat, and it produces water, and then a far smaller amount of carbon dioxide. The heat we will use in cogeneration two ways. High temperature heat will run through an absorber chiller in order to create 90 tons of air conditioning. The low grade heat we're going to funnel into the swimming pool to heat the pool for free. So what we're asking for here is authorization to enter into the agreement. We're expecting savings of between $140,000 on the low end up to $250,000, and you'll notice I have an editing error on the fiscal implications on the high end. It should be $250,000 as a result of this move. So you'll also see that Pasadena Water and Power and the General Manager, Phyllis Curry, wrote a letter of support. Our relationship with Pasadena Water and Power over the years has been unbelievable. They are our partners in whatever we do, and having PWP's support is also integral to the project, though they're not a part of the project itself.
I'd like to entertain a motion, then to have board discussion.
Move approval, and based on the letter of recommendation from Ms. Curry and the fact that we're not using any of our district funds up front, and we're going to be saving the money that's been projected, so I move approval.
And there a second. So motion by Mr. Thompson, second by Trustee Wah. Mr. Thompson, did you have a question? Any other further discussion? Trustee Soto, did you want to say something?
Well, I just wanted to truly and deeply thank the district and Vice President Van Pelt for moving this direction. I know I was speaking with our Vice President for Sustainability for the Associated Students earlier today. She was very excited to see this, and I think it's really a step forward for the college in terms of just what it does for the environment, and also just in terms of cost savings that perhaps means a few less reductions in other areas going forward.
And let me just also add that this keeps us at the absolute forefront of sustainability among any community college.
Okay. Well, any other board comments? Okay, we'll move to a vote. Advisory vote. All those in favor, indicate by the green light. Well, congratulations. Thank you for that. I want to take an opportunity to brag about Vice President Van Pelt really quickly, because I was at the Board of Governors meeting this weekend, this past week. The Vice Chancellor for Facilities, Fred Harris, came up to me unsolicited, and he said, you know, I was at a meeting with the head of sustainable development for the UCs and the head of development at Stanford University, whose only job is working on sustainable building projects, and then Rick Van Pelt. And they were making presentations, and Rick Van Pelt blew everybody out of the water with talking about the innovations that are happening at Pasadena City College. It was a powerful presentation. It caught the attention of people up and down the state, and he was just expressing unsolicited admiration for the leadership that Pasadena City College is taking and the work of Vice President Van Pelt, who also and is so excited. He's bringing folks from the Chancellor's office, including himself, to PCC in coming weeks to talk a little bit more about this fuel cell initiative. So I wanted to pass that along in public, because that was certainly something I appreciated hearing when I'm up in Sacramento.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to collective bargaining. Now, we have two items on the agenda. The action that the board is looking to take is to receive the proposals and set the hearing on the proposals before for an upcoming meeting. It is not to discuss the content of any collective bargaining proposals that we expect to be engaging with. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rocha.
Yeah, thank you. And
I do have a member of the public who would like to address
before
this topic.
General Counsel goes. Trustees, you have before you what is actually a standard item as the beginning of a negotiation with our faculty labor union. And the action that we are asking for is not approval of the proposal. We're asking you to adopt the proposal as our initial proposal, and the action that we are asking is merely to schedule a public hearing for April 4th on the proposal, so that we can engage our friends in the faculty union to discuss the proposal with an appropriate schedule. So General Counsel will explain this in detail, which is really a process issue and not a content issue, but I defer to the board.
Right, and primarily if there's any questions that we have, but I would like to also, I'll let General Counsel offer a brief point of view or perspective on it so that we're prepared to take our action.
Let me just give just a couple of minutes toward what the process is for clarification. There seems to be some misinformation about how this works. This process comes from the government code, from this board's bylaws, and from PERB decisions, which have clarified the law under the government code. It is a two-step process. It takes 2 meetings. The first is where the initial proposal by either side, that is by the district or by the exclusive representative, in this case PCCFA, presents an initial proposal for public consumption. That is, that the details of a proposal are presented, as has been done here in item M, so that the public is on notice of the details of the proposal. And the public has to have enough time to understand that proposal so that at a subsequent meeting, a public hearing can take place where the public can offer comment and opinion on the proposal. At the time of the second meeting, then the board adopts the proposal and authorizes the administration to negotiate with the exclusive representative on the proposal. Again, it's an initial proposal. It is not the end point. It is the beginning point. That procedure applies to both M and N, N being PCCFA's initial proposal to the district. But I would caution that the form that item N has taken place is not in compliance, and that is because it only has headings of topic areas as opposed to a developed proposal that can be considered to put the public on notice of the content of PCCFA's proposal. So after public comment and any questions, I'll be making a recommendation regarding receiving these proposals and setting public hearing.
Before we take public comment, are there any questions of the administration? I'll ask just one. Is the lack of specificity to the PCCFA proposal, would that prevent us from scheduling the hearing?
No, it will be my recommendation that you receive their proposal and go ahead and accept it and set it for a public hearing. However, with the request to PCCFA that prior to the April 4 board meeting, that PCCFA come forward and make its initial proposal public.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to invite a member of the public who had asked to address the board on this topic. Chris Fennessy, is he still in the? Great.
Thank you very much. My name is Chris Fennessy. I'm the Vice President for Academic Affairs of the Associated Students. I had a statement prepared, but seeing how it's late and with the General Counsel's recommendations on how to move forward, I'll break them more brief. It's particularly in the aspect of the proposal for a trimester calendar. I understand that we shouldn't be discussing content here, but I feel that the way the actual process is going is not exactly the way it should be going, because I don't feel that there's really been a shared governance process for this. I understand that this is a collective bargaining issue, and that that's something that must be happening, and I understand that completely. However, I feel like without a real shared governance discussion on this, students in particular are left out of the loop. We don't have a formal say in whether this is a good idea or a bad idea. And for the process to go forward on collective bargaining on the trimester system without already having that, I think is something that's a bit premature and is unfair to the student voice. I know that each of you, you passed the accreditation report. In that report was this flowchart, which is supposed to be what was passed as the way that policy is supposed to be addressed through shared governance on this campus, and it's supposed to use consultative actions and hearings through the College Council. It has not been used in that way. This flowchart has not been followed, and specifically about this topic, it is not being followed now. It hasn't gone to the College Council, it hasn't gone to either of the College Council's subcommittees. And I think that specifically as a representative of the students, we don't have a say in the collective bargaining. There isn't a student union or the associated students. And although we have a shared governance say, we don't have a collective bargaining say. And I think that it's unfair to us as a constituent body to not give us a formal role in the discussion on that particular issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before the board is the recommendation to receive and set the hearing date for April 4th, and then there will be a full public hearing as to the contents of the proposals.
Right.
But did you have something, Dr. Rocha?
I think the question is excellent, the comment is excellent, and I did want to talk about the process because your issue is process, and so, we're not talking about the content. But I would ask, since it is a shared governance issue, and this has gone through the calendar committee and will come back to the calendar committee if we're able to negotiate it, I would ask President Martinez to explain the shared governance issue here so that the students can be assured that the calendar committee on which the students sit will receive the proposal. So, Ed, could you just fill that in as to why we start with the Faculty Association?
Right. I guess I'll begin by explaining that it's clear that the larger calendar issue is indeed a collective bargaining issue, and that is something that has to be negotiated between the administration and the Faculty Association. Once that decision is made and there is an agreement, then it's the Shared Governance Calendar Committee, which has faculty, managers, students, and so on, that will then develop the calendars for the future, including such things as start and end dates, holidays, exam times, all of the details that go into the calendar. So this is to set out the bigger parameters under which the calendar committee will work.
Right. Can I just say that, of course, all members of the public, but especially the students, now have a month to meet, to talk, to study the proposal, and then to come to the public hearing and weigh in. So,
okay, I'd like to recognize Trustee Thompson.
A couple of questions for Ms. Cooper. One, if I understand correctly, you're saying that the reason that we have set forth the considerable detail of our proposal in the public record here is because we are required by state law to do exactly that?
Correct. That's in Government Code Section 3547 is the statute that covers the sunshine procedure. And the development of the proposal as set forth in the agenda it has to be sufficient for the public to fully comprehend the proposal. So the kind of items that appear in our initial proposal require this kind of detail because of their intricacy and subject matter.
Okay. So now basically if we approve the actions being recommended, we will schedule a public hearing on this on April 4th of this year, our one and only meeting in April. What happens between now and April 4th?
Well, a couple things happen. First of all, as I said, my recommendation will be that PCCFA come forward with the details of their proposal. In addition, we would invite PCCFA to start talking to us about the proposal at any time from now forward, although technically they could wait until after April 4. We certainly invite them and are ready and willing to meet with them at any time to begin talking about these proposals.
It's unfortunate, I guess Mr. Marheim has left us this evening, but hopefully someone will tell him that he can call you tomorrow and arrange for an appointment. Is that the person to call?
I will certainly make sure that he's aware of that, yes.
Okay, we would certainly encourage everyone not to sit back and wait till April or May or June or whatever. Start now. Talk in good faith, as I'm sure everyone will. So thank you.
Any other questions? I'd like to entertain a motion on item M to receive and set the public hearing.
Move approval.
Okay, I heard a motion by Trustee Wall. I'll take the second by Trustee Brown. Any further discussion? This is on item M. All those in favor? I'll take the advisory vote at the same time. Carries unanimously. Okay, on item N, it's the receive and set the public hearing regarding the proposal from the Faculty Association to the district. I'll entertain a motion to set. Is there a second? A motion by Trustee Waugh, second by Trustee Fellow. Is there any further discussion on that? All those indicate by using their voting device. Okay, the motion carries. Thank you, Gail, and thank you, Dr. Rocha, and we look forward to a very productive. Mr. Martin.
I told you 4 items ago I was going to say something on item M. Remember?
Yeah, I'm so
Bill
sorry.
said what I was going to say on item M. We sat here for 2 hours and heard lots of discussion on the budget crisis, and yet one of the most practical, realistic, and in some ways simplistic things that can happen to better this college and every student in it is to ask the administration and the PCCFA to immediately get in the same room and start talking. It's that simple. We get the two sides in the room to start talking through some of the critical issues that fall under their jurisdiction. It will move everything everybody wants forward faster in a more collegial way, which is what we heard over and over again in very harsh rhetoric for 2 hours. So I'd like to implore the administrative team, who has expressed an open willingness here this evening, I'll hold you to that, and the PCCFA to immediately get in the same room together, show up, and start talking. Thank you.
President Rocha?
Yes. Well, thank you, Trustee Martin, for your comments, and thank you, trustees, for your actions. I did want to say, in complete fairness to our friends in the Faculty Association, and also I wanted to connect this to an apology to Charlotte. She did raise a good issue, and I'm going to put this under the heading of crossed wires. And following up what Mr. Martin has said, is that really our task is how to uncross these wires. Because I really believe no matter how much we may differ from perspective, point of view, or on the content of issues, that all of us mean well and we're trying to do the best we can. But you raised a very good issue, and I want to apologize about why weren't we informed in advance. And the fact of the matter is that as soon as we got the public records request, I requested a meeting with Roger and for the next day on February 1st. And he was unable to meet with me until February 8th. On February 8th, I met with Roger and Suzanne and Krista directly and personally, and I informed them personally and directly that there was a public records request that had just come in, and it would require the salary and disclosure of every employee. I did that personally. What I didn't do, what I didn't think to do, I thought in communicating that to the representative of the faculty, that the faculty were informed. And so I do apologize for not following that up, and I will henceforth. But I would also say that that's an example of us missing each other. And then following up Mr. Martin's comments is that General Counsel has pointed out that on legal terms, right, legalese, as Roger termed it, that the faculty sunshine proposal is not what it's supposed to be. And the Faculty Association, Roger would have a perfect, I think would be okay if he said, well, we've never done it before that way, okay? And he might be right. But the fact of the matter is that now we're trying to follow a completely transparent process that is in absolute keeping with the Ed Code and the bylaws. In the past, the district never presented a proposal in its entirety to the union. We're doing that not because it's tactical, but because it's required by the law. So we understand, the administration does better than anyone, about how you need to, kind of get caught short by compliance issues. So again, I would follow up on Mr. Martin's invitation, and the invitation I gave to Roger on February 8th, that myself and Dr. Bell, any combination outside of General Counsel, let's sit down and begin to talk about the issues, begin to talk about the concepts. There are always disagreements between a union and a district, especially in these days. That's to be expected in any negotiation. But the real issue is that sooner or later, we're going to have to find a method to talk and then to compromise. So I appreciate Mr. Martin's comments.
Thank you, Dr. Rocha. Moving on to the next item, for future board meeting dates. We had scheduled a study session in 2 weeks because we are in the process of a facilities master planning process that is actively engaged. I had asked Dr. Rocha to consider holding that meeting in Sexton Auditorium so that we can see the state of certain facilities within the district. And
We're considering that.
so, I'm looking forward to having an in-depth conversation about what is needed to meet the needs of students going into the future.
That's right.
So that is going to be scheduled for the next meeting. I wanted to put something on the table. Since we are not having a meeting on the 18th because the campus is closed, the meeting on April 4th, and especially so that we don't keep folks till 11 o'clock at night, I wanted to poll the board to say, I'm willing to move my schedule around, which is not necessarily easy, to start a meeting earlier in the day, perhaps a closed session at 2, an open session starting at 3 in the afternoon, because that is our only business meeting scheduled for the month of April, because I see we have 2 hearings, we have a legislative plan to have, and I expect from the feedback from the audience, these might be very content-rich hearings that we have about the proposals, but I wanted to see if that's feasible for other board members if we were to move the April 4th meeting earlier in the afternoon and start.
I'll try, but it's hard.
I know, I understand.
This is very difficult.
What do you mean by early in the afternoon?
Like I said, have a closed session at 2.
No, that's not.
With a open session at 3 and
I can't do that.
Okay.
Maybe you might ask the earliest they could make it.
Right, is
I could start closed session at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock? Trustee Fellow, is that a possibility?
I try. It depends on what happens.
And we could, if the board is open to that, a closed session at 4 and then a public session at 5. Wanted to see if that's a possibility. I think we'll try to do that then, and experiment if we could start a couple hours earlier and make sure we have plenty of time. Trustee Waugh?
You know, I appreciate trying to change the hours to get all the business done, but I worry a little bit about changing the hours that much, especially for the open session where people are used to coming at a certain time. And perhaps, you know, some people aren't going to be able to make it at 4 o'clock. So I guess it depends on what the agenda items are that the public would want to address. So that would be my concern.
I don't want to do this if there's any objection to it. I anticipate the collective bargaining agreements with public hearings will be there. I want to ask the shared governance groups also how they feel an earlier in the day meeting would impact the ability for our constituent groups to participate, and managers, faculty, students, if we started a meeting at open session at 5 rather than 7 p.m.
I don't think that'd be a problem for managers.
And I can be flexible as well.
It should be possible, but we would have to make sure.
What time, for example, what time's Ashley's class?
Unfortunately, I don't have the entire AS board's schedule memorized in my head. I will find out. Most likely, I will be sitting in either way, and I'm available. If Alex is, then we should be fine.
If I could ask this, if with board approval, we will plan that schedule, but at the next board meeting, if we find there are serious complications to that there are significant impairs groups' ability to participate, we will take the action at the next board meeting to go with our traditional schedule. Is that okay, Trustee Waugh?
You need a motion to that effect, Mr. Baum, to change?
Yes.
I would move that we change the start date of the meeting on April 4th to 5 p.m. from 7 p.m. with closed session at 4 p.m.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Advisory vote, if you don't mind taking that, and all those in favor. Thank you very much. With the caveat that we may change it back at the next meeting if we find that that's a...
We can change it at our next meeting.
Right.
Wait a minute. That is our next meeting.
No, our next...
No, we'll have a study session. Right,
study
okay.
session. If
Right,
we have to, we'll agendize the ability to change the meeting.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's awesome.
Any other agenda items? We have Mr. Martin.
Yeah. when we get in these kind of difficult situations, we hear criticism on both sides of an issue where someone is feeling disenfranchised because they're locked out, and someone else is feeling scared or worried for personal safety because of agitation. And it cries back to the last larger demonstration that was experienced the day that the Iraq War started, which ultimately led to an administrative law judge making a recommendation which centered on a time, place, and manner policy. So fortunately, the President has announced more or less the end of major hostilities. I'm referring to Iraq.
Would that our President could announce that.
I find it an interesting parallel that we should, at some point, have a time, place, and manner policy come up. And I know the campus has worked on it. I know it's a difficult policy, but I think it's really necessary policy to be able to have the shared governance appropriately answer the question on where is the right place and time and manner for people to be able to express themselves while still providing others on campus the security and safety that they also require. So I'd like to encourage the campus and the shared governance groups to somehow try to dislodge this time, place, and manner policy wherever it is at the moment and work it up so that we can officially have something the board can act on that came through the process.
I'd like to what I'd like to do then is just ask we'll agendize an update on the status of the time, place, and manner policy, and then we'll let folks update the board as to where it stands. And then
That would be...
No, that's we're talking about future agenda items, so what to put on the agenda.
Right.
But anyway, so that's what I'll ask to do.
Well, that'll make a good research project. Again, I think Trustee Martin said we will put that on, and
yeah, we'll put it on an agenda, and you can update us to where things are,
and give you the information next time.
Mr. Thompson.
I don't know whether it has to be an agenda item, but we've had on the last this evening and also last meeting we had about talk or comments made that we have basically fired 45 instructors who were retirees. As I would approach as a lawyer, you can't fire a retiree. And I've talked to my law colleagues, and they say, what? But I'd like to have maybe Ms. Cooper just put together a 1 or 2 paragraph little report addressing that question. My recollection is that there is nothing in the current agreement between the college and the faculty association that deals with the obligation or preference or priority to rehire people who have retired for part-time positions. In fact, I believe we were given in some public document a letter from Bruce Barsuck, our counsel with Lippert, Cassidy, and Whitman, to the contrary, where that issue was raised prior to the agreement and specifically rejected. And so I'd like to have that addressed, if you wouldn't mind doing that, please, and along with the other part of it, as I remember it, that in the contract there is the obligation that if the retired personnel are rehired, they are rehired back at the salaries they were being paid before retirement, which, if I'm following it correctly, is the worst of all worlds, because they have no obligation to be rehired, but if we do rehire them, we have to pay them their prior salaries, which gets into the issue of the adjuncts versus retired faculty being rehired, et cetera. So long-winded way of saying you don't have to put it on an agenda item, but that's up to my colleagues here. But at least I'd like to have something from council addressing this question, and we can say, okay, here's the report on this, and have the public be aware of that.
So, Mr. Thompson, a written report would do for now.
For me, yes.
And then we'll see if we want to bring it forward for discussion. So we'll just request a written report.
It's on the web.
Right, that's fine. So we'll circulate the written report and bring it to the board. Trustee Mann.
Yes, our last meeting, we had scheduled in April a joint meeting with the PUSD board. What happened to that? Was it April 18th, April 17th?
At one point, we had a tentative hold on a date in April for a joint meeting with the PUSD board. So if you could come back to us and see if that is still a date they're looking for.
Mary, did we get a note on that recently?
Scheduled for the 17th of April, a Tuesday, which is when PUSD has their meetings, and that's the week that the campus is going to be closed.
Closure. Yeah. So we had a tentative date, and then the campus closure gets
Will you
in the way.
report back to the board
And
about,
so,
there is an interest, I believe, on the
Right.
board to have
Sure.
that joint meeting, but we'll schedule it at a time that works for both us
we'll
and them.
reschedule that.
But I know we can't discuss this, but it would seem, if we had planned to have a joint meeting, I think my thing's not working right. If we plan to have a joint meeting, we usually do not have that on campus. We've had it in the senior center. The fact that campus is closed, if the district, if a lot of time has gone in planning this, I don't see why we would not go ahead with the joint meeting.
I'll ask the administration
Would
to
you
report
bring back that at the next meeting?
Report back to us, because I don't know what the status is.
One more time, Jeanette.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. So you'll report back, and we'll talk about it, too.
Do so immediately.
Okay.
And Mr. Baum, I do have one other thing.
Yes.
My eyes are extremely sensitive to light. I really, really, really have difficulty, not only just with figuring out those lights, but when those lights come on, it really does hurt my eyes. I wonder if we could go back to voting the old way.
We will.
Put that on the agenda if you want.
No, thank you for the request. Any other suggestions about board meeting management and administration? No, I do appreciate all the comments and suggestions as we go forward. And with that, is there any further things? Okay, the meeting's adjourned.
So